Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman, Udaley,
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you. First up is communications.
Item 975, a request of David Mason to address council regarding police reform and use of force.
Come on up. Good morning.
Hello, my name is David Mason. I won't take up too much of your guys' time today, but just wanted to briefly discuss some things from last month after the August 4th event in Portland and things that happened on that day, and some thoughts from the community and your constituents regarding police actions that were taken and the response in the aftermath of that from various Portland police representatives.
Sir, put your name in the record if you will.
Oh, sorry, David Mason. On August 4th, there was a rally by Patriot Prayer, Joey Gibson, and the Proud Boys. If you're not familiar with them, you can look them up. There's tons of information all over it, but they are known for being agitators and doxing people and sending out threats, and have been known to drive around Portland, jump out of their cars, beat people up for various reasons that I won't state because they're fairly offensive and inappropriate, but based on people's sexuality or appeared sexuality, etc., color of their skin. So a number of people from Portland of all sorts of walks of life, all sorts of ages, showed up to say that we didn't want people coming down from Washington to share hate speech and potentially attack people, which they ended up doing that day. And in that, the response by Portland police was heavily focused at the counter-protesters, and a number of people were seriously injured and ended up in the hospital and could have died from the injuries they sustained. As a community, there's a number of us who would hope for some police reform in the aftermath of this, and that includes looking at the non-lethal weapons that are used in crowd control, as the ones that are currently used are extremely dangerous, and there are better options to use them, but our preference would be that the local police would be demilitarized. There's no need for police forces to have, military weapons when responding to unarmed civilians, even when there's a lot of them. We would hope that there could be some discussion about local policing, meaning that police live in the cities they work in. and third-party accountability for use of force in the city, so citizens can be aware of use of force when it happens and have a part of the discussion involving that. We would hope to be able to meet with the mayor and council to discuss these kind of things, and also look into a review of the crowd control tactics used, and riot response, et cetera. Last thing I want to say, the chief of police going on Lars Larson in the aftermath of all of this and the things that were said on Lars Larson about it, comparing it to a schoolyard fight, basically, and saying that the police showed up to fight counter-protesters, and when we got our butts whipped, we just went home and cried about it. I find that to be extremely distressing and unprofessional, and unbecoming of an officer of the law, who is supposed to be here to protect and serve.
Good. Thank you. And if I could just take a moment to respond to some of the comments you made,
Absolutely.
because you raised a number of, I think, important points. First of all, the question about third-party accountability. I just want to let you know, one of the reasons you don't hear me talking much about this is because there's not one but two separate investigations that are being conducted on the August 4th issue in particular, and the use of force in particular. One of the investigations is being conducted by the Independent Police Review Commission. And that is actually an entity separate from this body here. Technically, it reports to the independent auditor, but it really has its own staff and its own focus, and they're able to conduct their own independent investigation, and it's separate from the police bureau. There is also an internal police bureau review to determine whether or not policies were followed or not followed. And you made the good point about public discussion of crowd control tactics. In fact, there are directives that the police bureau is required to adhere to. Those are the policies by which police officers are judged.
I have them,
and
yes.
periodic, well, and many people don't, so it's, I think, it's just good to
Absolutely.
put it into the record so people know this, and they'll know they do have a say. Those directives periodically go out for public review, and people are encouraged to comment on those, and there's a number of organizations locally that review them, the ACLU, CopWatch, and others, and individuals are also encouraged to review those directives as they come out. And they come out on a regular basis, not only for crowd control, but use of force and other types of issues as well. So I thank you for being here, and I'm sorry to glom onto your comments to make those comments, but I think it's just helpful for the public to know that there are ways that those issues are being addressed.
Okay.
And I really appreciate your coming in.
Yeah, and I did put in a request the Wednesday after August 4th to get a meeting with you at some point. Haven't heard anything back, but I would love to have a meeting to maybe discuss some of those things further and try, because I know a lot of people would like to be involved in that kind of thing, just aren't sure how to.
Sure, yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a little awkwardness with regard to specific investigations.
Right,
But
of
in
course.
general sense, certainly I'm happy to, and Michelle over there behind Carla can help you do that.
Great.
Good, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Next individual, please.
Item 976, request of Jackson McKibben to address council regarding problems for all around Northeast Portland metropolitan area.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I don't know why they said Northeast Portland, I never put that. But my name's Jackson McKibben, is that all I need to say, right?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, cool.
You're good to go.
So the main reason why I wanted to come here, actually what made me come here is, so I live downtown Portland, and I'm sure everyone here can agree that just going grocery shopping or going into everyday businesses, they're surrounded by homeless people, and these homeless people will be, waving around weapons or things made in the weapons, or just being kind of a nuisance right outside of the door. And I've actually almost gotten hit with certain objects, and it's made me feel very uncomfortable. And they're American citizens. They have rights to, the streets too, but I think there should be limits set on how close they can be, because it's uncomfortable when you spend $150 on groceries, you come outside and you have people harassing you about money and stuff. It's not okay. I think that what you guys did with the construction this year for the roads did not help at all. I think painting lines and filling potholes, whatever happened with these nothing helped anything improve. It was like traffic just got worse than already what it was, and nothing's gotten fixed. As a driver every day, I drive for work, I see people drive 5 to 10 miles per hour under the speed limit, which is unsafe and unreasonable, and they'll be in the fast lane sometimes. These people need to be ticketed just like a speeder would. And also, I just want to say that I feel as though government has turned into the plague of man, and that, you know, our freedom as a citizen is directly proportional to my ability to control my government and to not let my government control me. And I feel uncomfortable that every day I see more and more that government officials overspend, they put the city in debt, and then they try to further tax the American people, put tolls on the roads, and I think it needs to be known that American citizens can throw out government officials. You guys are my servants under the Constitution. And I think that with what you guys say before you get in the office and what you do when you're in office needs to line up, truly. And I think there's a lot of mind control going on in this country. I think that we don't have a true freedom of the press. I think that we have a controlled owned press. The same money that owns the same people that own the money own the press. And in this country, it is God, man, Constitution, government, public servants, and the lowest case in statute law. So I think that's, oh yeah, and I believe that there are some elected officials in this country today that are absolutely opposed to freedom, which means free enterprise, which means economic opportunity, which is everything that America stands for. And I believe that they are bent on giving this country away and wiping this country out and putting this country under so that we have a one world government under communism. And I believe that they have a mighty force rising up against them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next individual, please.
977, request of Star Stoffer to address council regarding Portland police targeting and assault of community members, #ACAB. She called and is not able to make it and has rescheduled.
Very good. Next individual, please.
978, request of Stan Herman to address council to get an opinion to a question.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. My name's Stan Herman. I think you've all met me before. I just want to briefly tell you what my goal is going to be. My goal is to build a home for our military veterans and a place for restored military ships to be moored at my property on the Willamette River. Be a great tourist attraction for visitors that come to Portland. Also, this property on the Willamette River will develop a canoe and kayak facility for kids so we can increase more uses of the Willamette River for swimming and boating activities. A soccer park has been designed for 3 well-needed soccer fields for our community. They will be installed on the old warehouse deck. A soccer field is allowed use in this zoning with a conditional use permit approval. As I stated before, I must switch from a business communication to political agenda. Mr. Mayor, you and I met in the past 70 days ago. We met, and as of today, no progress has been made from that meeting. You, all of our city leaders, you daily, you paying attention? Are paid to voice your opinions and make decisions. I've seen and heard your remarks and your votes on many issues in the council meetings. I've been asking my city leaders for an opinion starting from my first appearance November 16, 22 months ago. For the record, why are you not giving me an opinion to my question I prepared for you back in November 2016? Keep kicking the can down the road. I'll keep coming back till I receive an answer from every one of you, or you simply say, Stan, I will not give you my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz.
Hammer, I have sent you a written response.
Pardon?
I sent you a written response. Did you not receive it?
I've met with a few people, but no progress. Can we meet again?
Saying no is not the same as not giving you an opinion.
You've also met with my staff my chief of staff numerous times.
I'm sorry, I can't.
You've met with my chief of staff numerous times, and the fact that we can't fix your problem doesn't mean that we're not paying attention or don't care. I don't have the power to fix your problem. And it's not for me to express an opinion.
One of you do have the power to sit down and just take a look at this, and we can make some great progress for the city of Portland, or we can go down the road.
All right.
It only takes one of you to take a look at it. And yeah, we don't have the time to talk about the details, but if I could get undivided attention with one of you for a half hour, we can have some fun and make some progress for the city of Portland and have a great facility. Anyway, you have my number. If anybody wants to give me a call, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. For the record, I met with Mr. Herman 2 weeks ago for half an hour. Next individual, please.
Item 979, request of Brian Smith to address council regarding a member of the Police Bureau's attitude towards citizens counter-protesting.
Is Mr. Smith here? Very good. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda, Carla?
We've had a request for 985.
985 has been pulled. Please call the roll on the remainder.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. First time certain, please. Item number 980.
Appoint Daisy Quinones to the Planning and Sustainability Commission youth position for a term to expire September 30, 2020.
Colleagues, today we have an appointment for the youth position on the Planning and Sustainability Commission, which is a 2-year term. This youth-specific position is a regular voting member of the commission. We know that young people offer great advice and bring a different and very important perspective to our work. And the previous youth who have served on the PSC have provided great ideas and great insight. Daisy Quinones is my recommendation for this position. If confirmed, she'll be the 3rd youth commissioner to serve on the PSC. I'd like to welcome Julie Acklin here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Julie Oken. I work for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and manage the Planning and Sustainability Commission. As I think most of you know, the commission was formed almost exactly 8 years ago, shortly after the Bureau formed itself. It is a diverse group of 11 volunteers who devote an amazing amount of time to work and provide you all with recommendations on projects coming your way. I feel like our commission is really different in that aspect of many other planning commissions around the country. We have architects, we have, transportation, housing advocates, we have environmental advocates, so a really nice mix of people who provide input and share their thoughts and work with staff on projects that, again, come back to council for your approval, and we really value the individual perspectives of each commissioner that we've had. So as the mayor mentioned, Daisy Quinones is hopefully our next appointment as our next youth commissioner. The youth commissioner position is a 2-year term as opposed to the 4-year term that commissioners generally serve. We like to offer the opportunity for a younger person who we have defined as between the ages of 18 and 25 when they start, give them the opportunity to share in the decision-making and the work that goes along with being a PSC member. And again, we're really excited that Daisy will be joining us.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Kat Schultz. I'm chair of the PSC, and I'm excited to welcome a new youth commissioner to our commission. About 5 years ago, we designated one of our positions for youth member. And since the youth position is a 2-year term, we've now had 2 previous youth commissioners. That experience has shown that the adjective youth is a misnomer, for the wisdom and maturity that those youth commissioners have brought to our discussion is well beyond their years. Their strength of knowledge around social equity has been vital to the PSC. Daisy has a bachelor's degree in planning, public policy, and management from the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. She will be starting her master's at the Urban and Regional Planning Studies at PSU this fall. Daisy was a member of the Multnomah Youth Commission, serving as co-chair in 2010 and 2011. She currently works at the Tenant Education Coordinator for the Community Alliance of Tenants, which we know is doing great work to support tenant grassroots organizing efforts, including building-based organizing and advocating for increased tenant protections. She is currently the chair of the Board of Directors in Momentum Alliance, a youth-led organization whose mission is to help young people realize their power and to mentor future social justice leaders. She also volunteers as a member of Metro's Committee on Racial Equity and Feast Grantee, an initiative of the Oregon Food Bank. Sorry about that. Daisy, you're going to be really busy in the months ahead of you. Daisy is committed to advocating equity in planning and understands how to work with diverse groups. I am pleased to introduce her today and look forward to having her as a member of the Portland's Planning Sustainability Commission as an advisory board to this council. Daisy, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Julie and Kat. Good morning, commissioners,
Morning.
Mayor Wheeler. Thank you all for having me today. I am honored to be your recommendation for the youth commissioner position on the PSC. As a lifelong Portlander, I'm deeply invested in and committed to this community, and I'm excited to continue my service to Portland as a member of the PSC. As the youth commissioner, I hope to further strengthen the equity framework within which we operate on the PSC, encourage cultural humility in our planning practices, and help elevate the voices of community members who historically haven't had a seat at the table. When I begin my coursework at PSU next week, I plan to focus my studies on housing policy and disaster resiliency planning, and I really look forward to incorporating the knowledge I'll be gaining in this program as part of my work on the PSC. And I'm really excited to be a part of this and help push Portland into the future, into a more thriving, healthier, and more equitable future. In terms of my workload, I will be finishing off my work on the Multnomah Youth Commission, on the on Momentum Alliance, and I'm really great at time management, so don't worry about that at all.
We have no doubt.
Thank you.
Very good, and I could probably take some pointers from you on that point, so I'll look forward to that.
Mayor, I
Commissioner
move the
Fish.
report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly?
Well, it's always lovely to see you here, and thank you for your service and continued service. Aye.
Fritz?
I can certainly vouch for your time management. It's having seen you since the Multnomah Youth Commission days. I'm really impressed with all that you've done, and you really check a lot of boxes here with Momentum Alliance, Community Alliance of Tenants, the Food Bank. Just thank you for your public service. You certainly exemplify the best of Portland's youth becoming mature people, or as was noted already, mature people, helping us to understand the youth perspective. Aye.
Fish?
You know, listening to your background, I think we need to take the youth commissioner adjective and just park it for a second and just say that you're one of the most qualified candidates we've had for an appointed position just across the board, and we're lucky to have you. Thank you for stepping up and serving your community. I'm very pleased today to support your candidacy. Aye.
Wheeler?
I'll just chime in with my praise as well. Thank you. We're glad to have your perspective on this. It's a very, very important position, and you're eminently qualified, and I know that you'll bring the same level of commitment and enthusiasm to this position as you have others. So thank you for once again stepping forward. I vote aye. The report's accepted. The appointment's completed. Thank you. Thanks to all three of you. So colleagues, we have about a 4-minute gap here before the next time certain. And unfortunately, we do not have any second readings that we could fill that gap
Should we
with.
take up the consent item?
Why don't we do that, because it's just a second reading, and that was 985, is that correct, Carla?
Correct, yes.
Could you read the item, please?
985, amend grant agreement with Portland Business Alliance for $30,000 to continue the downtown retail strategy implementation.
Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Well, I just will share a little about what this $30,000 for the downtown retail strategy implementation is for. Downtown retail strategy supports objectives of the Portland Economic Development Strategy to enhance vitality and distinctiveness of the central city, to showcase Portland's sustainable way of life and attract creative class talent to downtown. The PBOT contribution, which is what we are voting on today, helps to cover the cost of a downtown retail advocate. That cost is shared between PBOT, Portland Business Alliance, and Prosper Portland, and the $30,000 award from PBOT will cover 2 fiscal years. PBOT contributes about 15 to 20% of the costs, and the costs were included in the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. Aye.
Fritz.
And I'll just add that ongoing, this has been part of discussions with the downtown business community regarding parking meter rates, and I think it was involved in an increase several years ago that they supported. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The agreement is adopted. Excuse me. According to my clock, it is 9:59. I'm just waiting for it to roll over. $10 o'clock, 9:81, please, time certain.
Office of Equity and Human Rights, 2018 report.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I know that we're both very excited about this report, welcoming staff to the dais. And we're particularly pleased, both of us having worked on this, the Mayor's staff and Mayor and I, that this year it's rather a different report. It's in a video form and then a discussion. There has been an ongoing process over the last several months that the Mayor has led with my input on the future of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And this is kind of the end, both the end of the previous year for the office. It's also the end of that planning process, and it's the council's opportunity to have a discussion. Obviously, we can't go to a focus group outside of a public hearing to give our input on what each commissioner would like to see happen in the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Unusually, I have asked the Mayor if we can take public testimony at the end of this report. We still need to be within the 45 minutes, but I think it's also the community's opportunity to anybody who hasn't been involved in any of the process over the last several months to come and give us a couple of minutes on their input. I am really excited to be back in charge of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. I helped Mayor Sam Adams create it in 2011, and it's been operational since the first director was hired in March of 2012. And we've come a long way. Back there, well, I'll let the video speak for itself, and then I'll have some more comments on the end. And invite Interim Director Kofi Desu to introduce this item.
Thank you. My name is Kofi Desu. I'm the Interim Director for the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Fritz, Commissioner Udeli, Commissioner Fish, thank you for the opportunity to present our report today. This report has 2 parts. The first part is the video, which will serve as a documentary for Portlanders, but other communities that are interested in learning about what we have done. The second part will be an overview of a few things that were not included in the video. That is a PowerPoint presentation. So without further delay, I would like us to watch the video, and then I will follow up with the PowerPoint presentation.
I think that I see a number of roles for the Office of Equity and Human Rights. One, you are a driver of the racial equity standard. Doesn't mean that you have to do it by yourselves, but you have the information. You inform electeds. We have responsibility to govern racially, economically, equitably. You also are a catalyst for people to actually be able to be galvanized by the work of racial equity? And how do we get as much leverage around being a racially equitable learning city where we listen, we learn, and then we lead on it as we do on other things that matter to Portland? That's hopeful to me. And that's something that I'm willing to be engaged in and supportive of in every way that I can. There were a couple of very powerful reports that came out from the Coalition of Communities of Color, where folks got together and worked with PSU to say really how are communities of color faring in Multnomah County. And the results were pretty devastating. There were terrible disparities.
And so after the Coalition's publication, I went upstairs to Sam Adams and I said, we're not just going to put these on the shelf, right? Because we had that presentation at council and I was really concerned that we said, oh, this is terrible, somebody should do something about this. So I went and talked to Sam and we then and there decided we're going to do something about this. And we're going to listen to the community to figure out what that's going to be. But it was, I think, 32 community leaders for the most part, some city staff, but many, many community leaders, both communities of color and people from a lot of different leadership positions. And they said, city needs to put its house in order. So that's what we did. That's what the Office of Equity and Human Rights was set up with.
You know, it was very controversial when it first came before council. It was not a slam dunk, but I was persuaded it was time. Commissioner Fritz made a very compelling argument, and as did the community members who came before us.
So we were fortunate to have city council members who were on board of what the community was asking for. I believe that the Office of Equity and Human Rights is standing on many shoulders, and I believe that many initiatives have started, you know, like Vision PDX that was started under Mayor Porter. And all the community organizations and community leaders that worked hard to create a framework for equity in the city of Portland. In fact, Commissioner Fritz insisted that on top of, you know, centering racial equity, we should also center disability equity, and requested that, you know, the Portland Commissioner on Disability, for example, and the Human Rights Commission be housed in the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
I think one of the sort of maybe least understood parts of our work is when we talk about doing the inside first, getting our own house in order. Some people have determined that that means that somehow the outside work, which means where community exists, is not our concern. It couldn't be further from the truth. Everything we do in the city is about changing the outcomes in the community.
Well, the Office of Equity and Human Rights is charged with setting the equity policy for the city. It's important to have shared language and common terminology when we're talking about this concept. One of the ways we establish that is through Equity 101 training. Equity 101 is required for all city staff. We've trained over 5,000 city employees at this point, and that includes everyone working in the city, someone working on a water crew or out in the maintenance yard or in a cubicle, or city elected leaders and their staff members as well. It's required for everyone. We start off by looking at institutional racism and systemic racism, and we look at the history of racism in our country, but also here in Oregon. By understanding that history, you realize that so many community members are still living with the ghosts of that history, and then not everybody gets to start at the same place. We're often asked, why center on race? Well, race is still consistently a primary indicator of a person's success and wellness in our society. It's tough for some to realize that by prioritizing our efforts on the deepest disparities, we build a system that works better for all Portlanders. You can take a look at gender pay gaps and see that women are making less than men. If you use a racial equity lens, you'll see that women of color make less than white women. So by centering the conversation on women of color, then you can really remove barriers for everyone in that situation. Another example is when the arts tax process was rolled out. You could only pay with a credit card online. When we were approached to apply our racial equity lens, we knew that many Portlanders of color didn't have credit cards or internet access. Our recommendations helped the Revenue Bureau revise its process to allow folks to pay in a variety of ways and also in person if they wanted to. And that's just a quick example of how centering on race removed barriers for everyone.
Civil rights, Title VI and ADA Title II basically say that no person in the United States on the grounds of race, color, national origin, or disability can be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or subject to discrimination under any program, service, or activity of a government. Our approach to civil rights is actually vastly different than a lot of other jurisdictions. And this means that we kind of look beyond compliance. We've seen that when you look at the implementing regulations of civil rights and you look at equity best practices, they're kind of one and the same. Are we engaging communities that are the most underrepresented? Are we looking at using data to make decisions? Are we making sure that we're focusing on the needs and priorities? Are we using targeted universalism in our approach? And how does that follow through all the way from planning, policy, into service delivery? And again, really focusing on creating accountability measures within our government bureaus, so we're implementing those within the process, but we're also focused on the results for the community.
So the Disability Equity Program is essentially a twofold program. One part of it is the Commission on Disability, which is an advisory body to City Council, and it's made up of individuals with lived experience with disability from the community that sit on the commission.
It's a two-way street. They bring issues to us, we bring issues to them, and as time goes by, we're trying more and more to bring them in on every conversation where they could have an impact. One of those conversations was about the Rothko Pavilion at the Portland Art Museum. Currently, the Art Museum is pretty challenging to navigate on wheels. Or with someone on wheels, and there were concerns in the community that the pavilion would actually make entering the museum less accessible. So we were able to connect PCOD with leadership at the museum, and they engaged in conversations, and I think that they've come up with amicable agreement, and I think we are gonna, well, I know we're gonna have a much more accessible museum, beginning with the entrance and continuing throughout the facility.
The other part of the job is the policy advisement, which is what I do. Been with the city for 12 years now and have been a part of a lot of the big changes and innovations that the city has done to be more inclusive with people with disabilities. Some of the changes that have happened in Portland are things like an adaptive bike program. We're one of very few cities that are major cities that have a adaptive bike program. The other really big one, and the one I'm most proud of, is our private for hire policy, which says anyone, any single company operating in the city of Portland has to provide wheelchair accessible transportation. There is no other city that is mandating that.
The purpose of Black Male Achievement is to improve life outcomes for Black men and boys. Black Male Achievement was created with the intention of centering Black men and boys in that improvement. So we have a steering committee of 25 black men, and then we have our subcommittees that each focus on a specific target area: education, employment, justice system, and family stability. So through looking at these 4 different areas, and as well looking at the intersectionality of them, and centering black men and boys in that work as to where the issues are and what the potential solutions are, we're able to start bringing about some change. You know, I think of the young man who we stayed in touch with after the summer program, who presented very well, and in all the conversations that we had throughout the years at that point, seemed like the type of young man that would achieve at a high level with very little support. And come to find out at his university that he had some significant learning ability issues. He had some things that he needed to address if he was going to be successful in a college setting. What we were able to do was, first of all, provide that support network to remind him of who he is, to remind him of the success that he's already attained at that point, and then also to make sure that we put that lens on him about accountability. You know, you do have this thing going on, and we're here with you, and we expect big things from you. And we're gonna come to collect on those big things that we expect, right? So through our work with him supporting, and it was many, many men in the network of BMA that continued to support him, he was able to get back into school. He was able to work with his professors, with his counselors, and really get onto a track where it became less of just him presenting well and more of him being well at his core.
Portland's Human Rights Commission is an all-volunteer advisory body. The commissioners are appointed by City Council, and their role is to advise council and city leadership on applying a human rights lens to policy and procedures.
They've been very active, very engaged, helping to provide both a forum for people to express concerns that they have around human rights, but also to give the council really solid advice on ways that we can strengthen human rights here in the Portland area.
In 2017, Mayor Wheeler came to the Human Rights Commission meeting. During the conversation with the mayor, the Human Rights Commission talked about how the threat of undoing the DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, was really threatening Portlanders and Oregonians. Then Commissioner Fish brought a resolution about DACA and the importance of supporting DACA. And we were invited, the HRC was invited to give testimony. Daniel Franco Nunez, our HRC commissioner, who is a DACA recipient himself, gave testimony, really personal testimony on this issue, highlighting the fact that there's 11,000 Oregonians who are DACA recipients.
One key institutional tool that the Office of Equity and Human Rights has helped to create and establish within the city of Portland is the Budget Equity Assessment Tool. City bureaus have to apply equity lens to their budget allocations, thinking about the impact of the budget on communities that we serve.
I wanted to make it very clear when I became mayor that equity was going to be one of the key determinants of our budget process. We were going to make sure that equity was front and center. And so the equity engagement tool that we actually use during the budget process makes sure that's the case. And in fact, the director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights sits at the table right alongside the budgeting team when we're making decisions about the budget.
I think we've made an impact. We have a lot of things that have changed in terms of the institution. We have the budget equity tool. We have the racial equity goals and strategies. We have the 5-year racial equity plans. We have the transition plan for around disability. And there's just so much more to do.
My hopes for the Office of Equity and Human Rights to strengthen our relationship with communities that have demanded the creation of the office, to strengthen our partnership with the bureaus, to provide additional tools and additional education and training so that they can implement their plans.
So I think our city council has the ability, and I hope that they have the will, to literally lead on racial equity, racial justice, like we lead on bikes and all these other amenities of Portland.
Equity is a buzzword at City Hall, and I would like to see less lip service and more action. I'd also like to see the Office of Equity and Human Rights given more authority to implement these policies and really influence every bureau.
And I want to relentlessly hold people's feet to the fire here in the city to achieve the goals that we've set for the city. And if we do that, everybody wins. Everybody wins. We have a more diverse, better equipped, more experienced workforce, more connected to the community with greater opportunities for people in our community. It's a win-win-win. And I think we've made some important first steps, and I look forward to the next chapter.
This community is unsustainable if we don't have everybody succeed. And so that's, I think, essential work that I'm really proud of having helped start, committed to continuing to support as long as I'm in office and as long as I'm alive.
Mr. Interim Director, can I ask you, did you do this film, you produced in-house? Well, congratulations.
Yes. Yeah, I was going. Thank you. I was going
Jeff
to.
may have had something to do with this, but
yeah, I was going to say that Jeff Selby, thank you for making this documentary. I have some experience in editing videos, and it's not easy. It's not easy. So thank you, Jeff. I want to take this time to acknowledge the staff of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. We already called Jeff Selby. We have Nicole, Tatiana. Okay, I'm just going to say the names. If they are here, they can show a hand or stand up so people can see them. Judith Maury, Danielle Brooks, C.J. Robbins, Kapua Foster, Jonathan Simeone, Grace Hallett Labrador. I want also to acknowledge Matt Lim from the Bureau of Technology Services, who helped us collect data and put them, make them available for the city and the public.
Could we suspend the rules for a moment? Thank you.
Thank you. We also have the Portland Commission on Disability. Many of them are here today. They have postponed one of their meetings to come here and be present with us. We also have the Human Rights Commission and a Bureau Advisory Committee. So to start with my PowerPoint presentation, I want to remind people of the vision of the office. The vision of the Office of Equity and Human Rights is a city that works for all Portlanders.
Carla, can you please run the PowerPoint? Thank you.
A city that works for all Portlanders. That's our vision. The mission of the office is to provide education and technical support to city staff and elected officials, leading to recognition and removal of systemic barriers to fair and just distribution of resources, access, and opportunity, starting with issues of race and disability. The Office of Equity and Human Rights is continuing to normalize equity within the city of Portland. In 2012, we had a student from Portland State University do some research on the city websites to identify the bureaus that mentioned equity. We only found 8 that mentioned equity without any detail. 3 years later, we had another student conduct the same research. And we found all the bureaus had equity in their significant documents, including their vision statement, mission statement, budget tools, strategic plans, and all the important documents that guide their programs and practices. We are influencing change through education and training based on our mission. And today we have trained more than 5,000 city employees. We have to often accommodate our trainees by going to training sometimes at 6 a.m. and sometimes at 9 p.m. We are also influencing change within the city by providing some tools. One of the tools is the citywide equity goals and strategies. We were fortunate to have the support from City Council that made the citywide equity goals and strategies a binding policy. And that binding policy is guiding each bureaus in the implementation of their racial equity plans. We believe we have influenced change within the city of Portland through the demographic dashboards that is available on the website of the city, the Office of Equity and Human Rights. We could monitor the progress. And from 2013 to 2018, we have seen progress in the increase of the employees of color in the city of Portland. If we agree that our goal is to have a workforce that reflects the demographic of the population, we believe we are making progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. In 2013, 22.6% of the population of Portland is people of color, and 12% worked for the city. Today, in 2018, it's pretty much the same, 22% of people of color living in Portland. We have about 18% working for the city of Portland. So we can see from 12% to 18%, we have made progress, but we still have a lot of work to do, from recruitment to retention and promotion. The earnings of people of color have also increased significantly. We saw the increase from an overall earnings from $35,000 to $100,000 annually. In 2013, 0.68% of communities of color, employees of color, were within that range. In 2018, we have 13% who increase. The increase has been significant, but if we go beyond $100,000 a year, there is still a gap. If we take, for example, 100 employees making $100,000 and over, we have 17% employees of color and about 83% white employees in 2013. In 2018, we have about 20% employees of color and 80% white employees. Again, we have made progress here, but we still have some work to do. The Office of Equity and Human Rights did all this work in collaboration with many other bureaus. The City Council was our first partner in approving our reports, but also supporting the policies, recommendations that we have made so far. The Bureau of Human Resources was very supportive in helping us integrating equity in the cultural competency training for managers and supervisors. We did that from the beginning in 2012. The Bureau of Human Resources also helped us in create the Equity 101 training on the city learner system so that employees can register and also receive credits that establish some transparency and accountability in the training process. The Office of Community and Civic Lives, formerly ONI, worked with the Office of Equity and Human Rights by, borrowing first of all, borrowing our Equity and Communications Officer to help in the Welcoming and Inclusive Sanctuary City Task Force process. We worked in collaboration with the Portland Housing Bureau from the beginning. Portland Housing Bureau helped us provide training for the Coalition to End Homelessness. And that has had some impact, according to their testimony, in the work that they do to end homelessness. We have also loaned our public information officer to the Housing Bureau when they didn't have any PIO at that time. The City Budget Office worked closely with the Office of Equity and Human Rights to first of all, design the budget equity tool, but also use that to analyze the budget proposals from all bureaus. We will continue doing that work in collaboration with all the financial analysts to improve the tool and also support the managers within bureaus on how to apply the equity tool in their budget process from the beginning instead of waiting until the end. Data sharing. The Bureau of Technology Services and the Bureau of Human Resources helped the office to collect data and create the dashboard that is available. I can tell you that when we go to conferences outside the city of Portland, many agencies across the nation congratulate the city of Portland for putting that dashboard, serving as a model for other cities. We have worked in partnership with many government agencies. I want to mention one, the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. We were consulted to work with them through the development of their diversity and equity plan. And we ended with a training for their elected officials, board members, and staff. And in 2017, our office received the 2017 Government Partners of the Year. It's a nice certificate that I'm proud of. We also partnered with many other agencies. I can mention the Governor's Office, the Oregon Department of Energy, the Office of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion at the state of Oregon. And other agencies include the City of Tacoma in Washington, the City of Oakland in California, the City of New Orleans, the City of Austin in Texas, the City of Buffalo in New York. We received many calls, and some of them have visited the city of Portland to learn about how we have established the office and what are the programs that we are providing for the city of Portland. I want to end with a few challenges that we faced. The progress reporting on city bureaus' racial equity plans have been a challenge for us. And we were working with equity managers and other managers in the bureaus to find the best way to support the bureaus so that they can report on their implementation of the plans. Effectively setting citywide standards in a decentralized government model. We have faced that challenge, and we believe that the City Council will help us address those challenges. We also face challenges in elevating the disability equity work with limited staff capacity. We are at this moment seeing some opportunities, the change in leadership, but also the increased authority for citywide accountability from City Council. We also see an opportunity in the increased data and research opportunities for the City of Portland, and also opportunities to partner with communities on strategic plan. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we could have, thank you, Kofi. I really appreciate it. Does anybody on the council have any questions? It's a fairly comprehensive report. So now we'd like to take testimony. Could you raise your hand if you'd like to testify? So, looks like we can do that within 15 minutes, which you asked for. So can we do that? Thank you very much. We didn't have a sign-up sheet since it's a report, and we don't usually take testimony on reports. This is an opportunity to continue a conversation before the council comes back with a work session later in this fall to look at both the opportunities and the challenges and decide how we want to move forward. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Three minutes, name for the record.
Let's see now. Is this is okay, yes. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Udaley, Commissioner Fritz, and Commissioner Fish. I am Larry Cross, and I'm a member of the Portland Commission on Disability for 2 years. I believe in the importance of the Portland Commission on Disability, the city bureaus, the city council, other organizations, and the people of Portland. I want to succinctly describe, from my point of view, 3 specific areas of the Commission's importance and influence. First, the City Council and City Bureaus. I'm a member of PCOD's ABE Committee, that's the Accessibility in the Built Environment. Each month, at least one bureau comes and visits us for our advice. Last week, two staff members from the City Bureau of Transportation sought our advice relating to scooters and public roadways. In the past and the future, PCOD has and will provide input to bureaus relating to improving building codes, advancing the concept of accessibility as a component of affordable housing, encouraging the implementation of ideas relating to visitability and universal design in the new housing projects, especially zero-step entry, and hopefully engaging with Prosper Portland, which seeks, quote, collaborating with partners for an equitable city, unquote. Second, working with other organizations now and in the future to improve life for everyone in Portland. Last December, the Portland Art Museum reached out to the Commission for advice on how to improve the museum's physical accessibility and to expand programs that increase ease of use for people with a wide range of various disabilities. PCOD's involvement also includes Commission members currently and in the future assisting the museum on the design of the Rothko Pavilion. I personally believe that the Commission should become involved with the problem of homelessness, considered by many people to be Portland's biggest challenge. The homeless, houseless population is too often overlooked in terms of disability. The 2017 Multnomah County point-in-time count notes that 72% of homeless, houseless people have disabling conditions. Third, the Portland Commission on Disability continues to emphasize inclusion as a guiding principle. And this is from John Dunn, 1624. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And that remains true today. And I will modify John Donne to 2011. No individual is an island, entire in itself. Every person is a piece of the community. And as a personal goal of mine, as a member of the Portland Commission on Disability and as a private citizen, I seek to continue to help create a Portland that increases inclusion for everyone. Thank you.
Talking about a strategic planning process and voicing some concerns that he had about current issues in our community. And it's that direct access with city commissioners that helps us make better policy, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, anybody who comes here and quotes John Donne is good with me.
Well, I think no person, everybody, not no man. That's
right.
The old days.
Yeah, it's good seeing you. Thanks for being here.
Can we hear the interpreter? Great. Hello, my name is Philip J. Wolf. It's really nice to be able to speak in my native language of ASL. Hello, Mayor Wheeler. Hello, City Council members, commissioners, good morning. I've been a commissioner with PCOD. I'm now on my 4th term. For a number of years, and the reason I am involved with Portland Commission on Disability is because as I've lived in Portland, I've noticed a lot of issues relating to accessibility, especially when it comes to providing accommodations according to ADA law. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the struggles in the city of Portland with compliance with the ADA. I have a vision of ADA compliance meaning not just providing enough accommodation, which is what we've been doing so far, is meeting the legal requirements, but we all know that that's not enough. We need to be providing a vast amount of accommodations to meet everyone's needs. And unfortunately, from my experience, providing ADA awareness and trying to teach and train other bureaus and other city employees, I've been informed, sometimes 5 minutes before a meeting that there's no accommodation or no interpreter, and that breaks my opportunity to train and teach and be involved. I have a lot of experience where I've showed up to various events that will not have a point of contact for accommodations. I myself have to make a number of calls or visit these places myself just to find someone. And I know even some city officials have had events that I've struggled to find who is going to be providing accommodations for me, oftentimes not even providing an interpreter for me. And that's information that I don't have access to. And if one of us from the deaf community don't have access, we all don't have access. I know that Commissioner Fish made a public statement during his campaign that he would not go to any public forums if it was not accessible, but I saw you show up to a number of them that were inaccessible to me. So there's just ways that I've seen this manifest in the city, and I wanted to provide maybe 2 options for solutions. And I have actually talked with Mayor Wheeler specifically. I want to make sure that you're hearing this, but talking about the money, because I do recognize that accommodations are often not provided because of budgeting issues. If we took 1% of the budget from each of the bureau, almost like a tax, the money collected would be able to provide accommodations for 1 year, sign language interpreters at those kinds of events. And I think that that would lessen the strain on a lot of these bureaus and smaller organizations that aren't able to provide the accommodations. I know that OEHR and City Council are sort of a parent and child relationship. We have that sort of connection and relationship, and I believe that a parent has an obligation to support their children. And so I believe that y'all as our parents should be involved with PCOD and OEHR directly and in person to guide us and give your input on how to develop and be here so that we can all continue to serve the community and really hear each other and gain a rapport and a better relationship as we develop these policies for the community. So just to sort of wrap up, I am continued in my commitment to improve the access and the involvement of the deaf community here in Portland, and especially here just in City Hall and City Council. I've been here a number of times where I've seen exposure to different cultures through dance and music, Asian cultures, African cultures, Native cultures. I love all of the different performances and events that I've seen here. The exposure and diversity is beautiful. I would love one day to expose Portland to the deaf community in the same way. We have amazing painters and performers, designers and musicians who are part of the deaf community, and I just want to offer myself as the resource for that to make that happen. The Portland Commission on Disability is proud to be involved, and I'm proud to be involved with all of this work. So thank you very much for your time today. And if there's any more questions for me, please feel free to let me know. You know I'm always here. I'm always trying to make myself available for all of you to provide the resources I have for the benefit of all of us. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mary Legaubo. Thank you so much for allowing testimony on this report. I'm here representing the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District that Kofi mentioned earlier. Our district is a public service district, and it's dedicated to the conserving of resources, specifically soil and water, for people, wildlife, and the environment. As such, our work benefits the City of Portland's overall health and its viability. Our work is conducted in very close partnership with its residents and with a lot of the different bureaus that you all are working with. Our board of directors, which is elected, as well as associate directors that are volunteer, have declared that the strength and vibrancy of our district rests on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Without this commitment, the district will be unable to succeed in its mission. In adopting the district's racial equity statement, sorry, I'm emotional just thinking about it, the board affirmed that gaining the perspective of many will increase the organization's overall strength, and that by working proactively and deliberatively to be equitable and inclusive, the district will be more successful in our work. We never would have gotten here without the Office of Equity and Human Rights, without specifically the work of Kofi and Judith. They met with us, they tailored a very impactful training. The Equity 101 training was what you just heard about, rooted in the history of our city, just hard to take. Many folks that were unclear on why we were doing equity work were no longer unclear. We actually had one board member who was one of the ones that was a little unclear about why we were doing equity work, literally say, aha, I get it, in the middle of the training. We had another board member talk about how transformative it was. I know for me that was certainly the case, and it empowered me to want to move forward regardless of how long the road ahead would be. One thing that Kofi spoke to over and over again was how it's about performance. So now that we've declared this hard work, we want to walk hand in hand with the Office of Equity and Human Rights and the City of Portland and all the bureaus we work very closely with to continue this work. We commend you for your vision in creating the office, and we ask you to continue to support and allow for the license for this important training to be allowed to outside partners as well as internal bureaus. Thank you again for this vision, and we look forward to continuing this hard work.
Thank you. Mayor, I just want to Carla?
I didn't have a sign-up sheet, so got one more.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. My name is Richard Hernandez, and I would like to address, as you well know, there has been, a visual going on, of people, that want you to sign, discontinue the contract with ICE, and for me, you know, it's a matter of judgment and morality of what we are doing to the immigrants, you know, that are being, you know, locked up in cages. People probably, you know, I'm, you know, white, and I probably have some of the advantage, and overall people don't get, you know, okay, of course they cross the border illegally, but one scenario is that they don't understand, you know, these people that these immigrants are being detained in these detention facility. It all boils down because they're not white. You know, if there were white people like all these people around, people would be up outright. But no, we seem to laugh and think, okay, they're illegal immigrants, and we just have them locked up in cages. And I want you to stop harassing the people that are holding the vigil until you come and have a meeting, you know, with people there to sign to make this a sanctuary city. And even though I have a place to live, you know, I come down and spend a lot of my time with the people that are doing the vigil, because I share the goal and the beliefs with their campaigning. And I do not like the way the Portland Police Bureau is using them, you know, targeting them as a homeless camp. Let them have their encampment until you're willing to have this conversation, you know, what they want, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And I appreciate your testimony. And just so you know, because it's something of a fragmented movement, but I did have a chance to meet with some of the folks who have been protesting outside of City Hall yesterday. And I think there was some confusion. Number one, the city of Portland does not have a contract with ICE. So there are some people who are wondering, why haven't we canceled our contract with ICE? There is no such contract, to be clear. Number two, there was confusion as to my role and the city's role with regard to ICE. ICE is actually a federal agency. We do not control ICE here. And I think every member of this council has certainly spoken up on the issue of ICE and immigration. I most certainly have, but we actually do not control that agency. It is a federal agency, and as such, that is controlled by the administration and Congress. So I'll just leave that at that. Commissioner Fritz, that concludes
so Mayor,
our public testimony. Commissioner Fish.
I want to just give one piece of feedback on something, because we've heard, I think, eloquent testimony today about the need to make our democracy more accessible. And what we learned in the last election cycle, either because of campaign websites that did not translate the material into multiple languages, or because of sponsoring organizations for various campaigns, for various events that did not provide fully accessible proceedings for people that were either, that had a disability, however broadly you want to define disability. We do actually have leverage now to address that, and I hope to work with Commissioner Fritz to create code language under the open and accessible campaign funding system that requires candidates that receive money to take a pledge that they will run accessible campaigns, that they will not participate in events that are not fully accessible. And I think it's through that kind of leverage that we can really make meaningful change in making sure that everyone is heard at election time.
Thank you. Yeah, so, absolutely.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Udaley. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaley?
Well, I don't believe she's in the room, but she's the first voice we heard on that video, and I just want to wish Sharon Gary Smith a happy birthday. She celebrated her 70th birthday on Monday. She is a true force for justice in our city and an inspiration to many of us in this room. Larry mentioned PCOD's work with Rothko Pavilion. I recently met with the director of the museum, and he shared with me that those conversations are actually ongoing, and because of PCOD's involvement, the museum is using a universal design approach to the whole remodel, which is incredibly exciting. And it may be the first kind of major arts institution to do so. So thank you for the thumbs up from Philip. It struck me when Jeff Selby was explaining the rationale for centering racial inequity, even though there is other inequity, certainly in our city, that centering racial inequity is another form of universal design. Because when you are addressing and serving the needs of the extremes, the middle takes care of itself. And that's true whether you're designing the entrance to a museum or a program designed to eliminate or decrease inequity. So thank you for that, Jeff. Mr. Wolf, it was beautiful to hear you speak in your native language. And I am disheartened to hear that you've received the message that we don't have the resources to provide accommodations for city program services and activities. No one should ever hear that message from the city. Of course, we can't control what goes on across the whole community. We can certainly help educate the community. I would love if we could provide resources, but I can't put us on the line for that right here and now. But just looking at our website, there's a request an accommodation or contact an ADA coordinator page that requires individuals to contact ADA coordinators in numerous different offices, and I see that that in and of itself is not very accessible, so I want to put it out there that I think we just need to do a much better job on making that request process as simple as possible and accessible as possible. Finally, I just want to thank Commissioner Fritz and former Mayor Sam Adams and everyone who was so vital in establishing this office. As still one of the newbies on City Council, I guess that will be the case until January. It was really helpful for me to get all that background, and I feel like through the process of participating in the video and this presentation, I have an even better understanding of the office. So thank you, Kofi and Jeff and Nicole and everyone in the room. I, of course, vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Udaley. And I know from both your comments on the video and just now and what each of my colleagues will say, people have wondered, does the council care about equity? Is this just a buzzword that we talk about without really any meaning or any heart and mind commitment? And it's very clear that there's a lot of commitment on this City Council. So thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for the opportunity to, again, work directly with the Bureau and with all of the bureaus and with you on this. I think what has been absent for the past 5+ years is a commissioner who has the capacity to be able to be the voice to the community and to the city about the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And I supported both Mayor Hales and Mayor Wheeler in their desire to have the Office of Equity and Human Rights in their portfolio to emphasize its importance. Mayors get called in multiple different directions, which is an understatement of the year, right, Mayor Wheeler? And I'm finding that there's a lot fewer public events in the Water Bureau than there were in the Parks Bureau. So
hopefully it'll stay that way. Hopefully it'll stay that way.
Yes, well,
that's my wish for you.
I vividly remember your pump station opening, Mayor, Commissioner Fish, which is kind of one of the highlights of what one gets to do as the Water Commissioner, because it's a lot of just very hard work on engineering things that not as many people want to know all the nitty-gritty details about. people in Portland care about equity, and they care about racial equity and disability equity and many other forms of discrimination and inequity. And as Commissioner Udaley just explained, by focusing on the most severe, we intend to do better on everything. So thank you, Interim Director Kofi Desu. You were part of the Office of Human Relations under Mayor Potter, founding member of the Office of Equity, now doing a magnificent job as its interim director, and I really appreciate your guidance. And for the 11 staff in the Office of Equity and Human Rights, let's just emphasize 11 people did all this work that you just heard about. And it's been growing over time. I can't remember how we started. I think we started with 5, something like that. So I look forward to collaborating with you and to figuring out what are the next steps, because this work has started, it has momentum, it's going to need more resources in order to get the right direction forward. Thank you, Jeff Shelby, for your amazing creativity and for telling the story when elected officials can't. And if anybody wants to share the video, it is up on the Office of Equity and Human Rights website. Theirs is one of the outstanding websites on the city's portfolio. Thank you, Andrea Valderrama on the Mayor's Policy team, Claire Adamsick and Tim Quayle on my staff. And the city's equity managers. Colleagues, I am going to be asking for your permission to meet with your equity manager staff and bring them together on a regular basis. That's something that hasn't happened as much as I think it should. And it needs both the staff in the office and experts in the Bureau to really dig deeply into the issues that are faced in the Water Bureau are going to be different from the ones in the Parks Bureau. And so we need subject matter experts. And I can't finish this, well, actually, I'm close to finishing, but I'm getting close. I wanted to tell the council that we're going to be coming fairly shortly, later this fall, with administrative rules and standard operating procedures for accommodations. Heard both Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Udaley's interest in that. I think we all are committed. We need a how to make it happen and a directive to make it happen, and that's what we will be bringing forward. And we also need more staffing resources for the Portland Commission on Disability. So I'll be having some conversations with the Commission. We had a consultant doing an analysis of what the Commission needs to move forward, what the staff need to move forward. We have experts in the office who, again, cannot serve the entire Bureau, never mind the entire or the entire city, never mind the entire community, with just 3 staff. And so we need, there will be a request coming to council for that. The PowerPoint showed that we've made some progress in hiring people of color. It showed we have not made very much progress at all in having people of color in the highest positions, including the director positions and those earning over 100,000. We are going to need to look at retention and promotion and how is the city handling that. There was a glaring absence of information on the dollars, where does the money go? The city spends billions of taxpayer and ratepayer dollar every year. Who's getting those contracts? Have we made any progress in that? And I'll be working with the Budget Office and Procurement Services and others to have more of that information, because unless we're tracking how we're doing, we don't know whether what we're doing is working or not. We have the service reports from the East Portland Action Plan on what bureaus are doing in their particular area. We don't have that for the rest of the city. So equity is a word that maybe people don't necessarily understand. It's about jobs, services, and contracts. And those are the measurables by which we can see, are we becoming a more equitable community? And so those are things that we will be tracking. And I'm just, again, thrilled to be working with the community, the staff, and my colleagues on the council. Aye.
Fish.
Well, I'll be very brief. I want to thank Kofi and Jeff for an outstanding presentation. I don't remember the last time we had a video and a PowerPoint, but they were both superb, and the commentary that you offered with both were, I think, very helpful. And I'm really pleased that Commissioner Fritz addressed this issue about the Office of Equity Leadership transitioning from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor, because there is this conventional wisdom that if a bureau or an assignment is placed on the 3rd floor, it is by definition elevated somehow in profile. I've been on this, I've had the honor of being on this body for 10 years, and what I've learned is that often it's the marriage of someone, of a colleague's passion and an assignment that ensures that the work really gets the priority and the attention. So I'm pleased that Commissioner Fritz will be leading the Office of Equity and Human Relations, and I'm also pleased that the mayor made that assignment, because I think it shows a confidence in the mayor's office that they could make an assignment on the second floor without in any way diminishing the significance of the issue. And I think that's very important. Today we're accepting a report. I enthusiastically accept your report, and thank you for your good work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, I just want to second what everybody said about the assignment of Commissioner Fritz as the commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Equity. In my mind, there was no other choice. It was the right choice. She has approached this issue with tremendous passion, with tremendous experience. She was there at the creation of this office. And it's true what she said about mayors getting pulled in different directions, whether it's housing issues, whether it's homelessness issues, whether it's policing issues, whether it's infrastructure issues, whether it's economic prosperity issues, whether it's development issues. There are always issues that are front and center. And my honest concern was this. I know that this council prioritizes equity, but I didn't want it to be the second or the third or the fifth thing in line when I got into work every day. I wanted it to be the first thing in line because it's critically important to the future of this community, as my colleagues have just laid out. And Commissioner Fritz and I had a number of conversations, and I was convinced that this is her priority and that she is passionate about it and that she has lots of good ideas about how to strengthen this Bureau, both in terms of its inward-facing functions and the opportunities community-wide. And so my feelings here have only been validated today by the comments of Commissioner Fritz and my colleagues. Kofi, you've outdone yourself. Stepping in as an interim bureau director is very, very challenging, and particularly for a bureau that is in the process of strengthening its vision and identifying its goals and making sure that it has the staffing and the resources that it needs. And I'm very, very proud of the work that you have done. You have served us all extremely well, so thank you for that. Some great comments were made today during the testimony. Philip had raised the question about the cost of accommodations. And I have been very clear, I don't think it is an add-on. I view it as a mandate. It is a requirement of doing business that we provide accommodations. It's also the law. And so I object when bureau directors say, well, we'll do it, but you need to give us more money first in order for it to happen. No, that's not the way it works. Prioritize it. That's my directive. And so I'll look forward to working with Commissioner Fritz and Udaley and Fish as they figure out what sort of policies they want to implement. But I want to be really clear about where I am on that subject of accommodations. Good suggestion to make sure that every flyer or if we have something on the web and it's a city function, let's not make people fish around to figure out who to call for accommodations. I mean, I don't go to the city website all that often, nor should I expect other people to do that. Let's make it easy, and that's sort of a no-brainer, low-hanging fruit, easy solution so thank you for that. I want to thank Andrea Valderrama in my office. I'd be negligent if I didn't, but thanks everybody who is here today. Thanks Commissioner Fritz for your grand leadership. I vote aye. Report's accepted. Thank you, everyone. Could we, let's catch up a little bit. Let's read items 982 and 983 together, please.
982, consider the proposal of Andrew Toll, 3J Consulting, Inc., and the recommendation from the hearings officer for approval of a comprehensive plan map amendment, zoning map amendment, conditional use master plan, and adjustment review for Parkview Christian Retirement Community at 1825 Northeast 108th Avenue and properties at Northeast 106th Avenue, LU 17-113086, CPZC CUMS AD. And 983, amend the comprehensive plan map and zoning map and approve a conditional use master plan and adjustment for Parkway Christian Retirement Community at 1825 Northeast 108th Avenue and properties at Northeast 106th Avenue at the request of Andrew Toll, 3J Consulting, Inc., LU 17-113086, CPZC CUMS AD.
Well, that was a mouthful, Carla.
It was.
So I've reviewed the record of last week's hearing, colleagues. There's two items, 982 and 983. We'll take votes on these items separately.
Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
Just had a question. Is anyone here from the Parkview Christian Retirement Community? Okay, we had a kind of a full house last week. This is the formality. We're adopting findings, but I just wanted to find out if we had any of our friends from the community. Okay.
Very good. I now move to adopt, this is with regard to 982. I now move to adopt the hearing officer's recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from the mayor, second from Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll. I'm sorry, that was Commissioner Fish. Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Recommendation is adopted. With regard to 983, I move to amend the comprehensive plan map and zoning map and approve the conditional use master plan and adjustment for Parkview Christian Retirement Community. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from the mayor, second from Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much. And item number 986 is next, please.
Authorize a grant agreement with Catholic Charities in an amount not to exceed $500,000 to support the Universal Representation Project through the Equity Corps of Oregon.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm thrilled to see this item come before council today, and I'd like to take a second to remind us of the path that led us here. In March 2017, council passed the Welcoming Inclusive Sanctuary City Resolution to reaffirm the city's commitment to protecting and supporting our immigrant and refugee communities. In the fall of 2017, with the mayor's blessing, the Office of Community and Civic Life, then ONI, took the lead on convening a task force that was authorized to provide council with concrete recommendations for actions we could take. This task force convened in January and by March 2018 made 4 recommendations to council. They prioritized the creation of a legal defense fund as the most urgent request that would immediately bring relief to the most vulnerable immigrants in our community. Luckily, our community partners were already working on a proposal for universal representation that would meet this need. I invited the Equity Corps of Oregon to a council work session so we could better understand and discuss the proposal. My office was able to submit a budget request for $500,000, which was approved by council and has since been matched by the county. Today's action will release these funds to Catholic Charities, which is the fiscal sponsor of this initiative. I'll say more about the outstanding needs after our invited speakers have a chance to provide their testimony. I'm hoping they are here. For now, however, I want to express my gratitude to community members for their advocacy and organizing, and to my colleagues for their continued and active support. So we have 8 invited speakers today, and I'd like to invite the following speakers to the table. Roberto Gutierrez, it's always easier to say when I'm not up here. Leland Baxter Neal from, Roberto's from CASA. Leland Baxter Neal from ACLU. John Herrera, Catholic Charities. And Shanpong Sinlapasi from American Immigrant Lawyers Association. Oh yeah, you are here. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, and it's all yours.
Mayor Wheeler, sorry, City Council members, for the record, my name is Roberto Gutierrez, Policy Director for CAUSA. Universal representation is designed to ensure just and fair legal representation by providing effective representation for our Oregonian immigrant populations. Nearly a year ago, a group of stakeholders convened together to design our Equity Corps model. So basically, I want to extend thanks to those folks here today. This effort would not necessarily happen if SOAR, ICS, Catholic Charities, MPD, IRCO, Latino Network, and the Innovation Law Lab did not come together to craft this proposal. I especially want to recognize the Commissioner Udaley's Sanctuary Task Force because those members who participated in that work group through a series of months helped educate and bring this recommendation forward, and they were definitely instrumental in this process. Special thanks goes to Stephen Manning from the Innovation Law Lab, Leland Baxter Neal to my right, and Juliet Stumpf, professor at Lewis and Clark Law School, Teresa Smith, Lindsay Johansson, 2 students at Lewis and Clark Law School for researching and designing and crafting this Equity Corps model. Special thanks goes to also Elena Jacob. She is one of the conveners of Oregon Ready for kind of guiding and shepherding this through with me for the last 10 months. And lastly, I would be remiss if I did not thank Commissioner Udaley for her commitment and leadership on universal representation. So we thank you. Mayor Wheeler, I'm not sure where Commissioner Fish went, but Commissioner Fritz, this city investment is unprecedented and will reach so many Oregonians, will be felt through a variety of individuals and families across the city here. And I want to note that Portland led the way with this funding. They were the first jurisdiction in Oregon to support universal representation, so I commend that effort here today. And we hope moving forward you will support our broader statewide advocacy because it's a conversation we hope to pursue here in 2019. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Morning.
Commissioners. My name is Leland Baxter Neal, and I am the immigrant rights attorney for the ACLU of Oregon. Last time I appeared before you, I was working with Metropolitan Public Defender's Office, but have switched. Thank you for taking the time to consider the Equity Corps proposal and for your decision to vote to fund the Universal Representation Project. It is a very impressive investment and shows a lot of leadership. It is a fundamental tenet of our democracy that every person in this country, regardless of immigration status, has constitutional rights. But those rights mean nothing if individuals cannot meaningfully assert them and if they are not protected in our courts. We are living in an unprecedented time. The federal government is actively trying to keep immigrants from asserting their rights in court. And we saw that here in Oregon when, on May 31st, the Trump administration locked 123 asylum seekers in the federal prison in Sheridan and barred immigration attorneys from entering. In response, the ACLU of Oregon and Innovation Law Lab brought a federal lawsuit demanding that the men in Sheridan be allowed to have access to attorneys. The day before we were in court in that case, President Trump tweeted the following: "We cannot allow all of these people to invade our country. When somebody comes in, we must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came. Our system is a mockery to good immigration policy and law and order." The judge in the Sheridan case, however, rightfully recognized that immigrants have a constitutional right to counsel and ordered the government to allow the immigrants in Sheridan to have access to attorneys. Since then, every detainee who was interviewed was found to have a credible fear of harm in his home country and has been cleared to bring his asylum case before an immigration judge. And nearly all have now been released from Sheridan in accordance with the law and thanks to their ability to access counsel. The Sheridan example highlights the need for universal representation and the Equity Corps in 2 ways. First, the Trump administration's project of mass detention and deportation of immigrants of color is premised not on the rule of law, but on the absence of law. True rule of law necessarily guarantees individual rights, an inconvenience for the Trump administration, and one that is guaranteed with the presence of counsel. Second, the example of Sheridan raises the critical question of what happens next for those men who have been and will be released from Sheridan. What I can tell you is that they now join more than 500,000 immigrants across the country who are facing deportation proceedings, in which the government is always represented by an attorney, and which the immigrant is not necessarily, and where immigrants who are not represented by counsel face dismal odds of successfully asserting their rights and remaining here in communities they have built and with families that they are a part of. But today, with this vote, you say, we say, not in Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is John Herrera. I'm the Director of the Immigration Legal Services Program at Catholic Charities, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today just doing testimony, and more than testimonies, words of thank you for all of you and all my colleagues and people who already mentioned that are part of this important project to defend immigrants in Oregon. And we started here at home in Portland. This is the first step that the government has started to do more than words and resolutions, but a concrete step to keep families together, to prevent our immigrant and refugee community to turn apart. Together with the private attorneys, nonprofits, legal service providers, and now the government, united to prevent the separation of families, aiming to preserve the rule of law and also the due process that this actual administration wants to ignore. We are united together to keep our families in Oregon safe of separation. This is just not only a matter of keeping immigrants here because we are seeking protection from the government, but this is a human being issue. We are separating families, and that's not allowed according to the founders of this wonderful country. We came here seeking refuge, and that's what the city of Portland is doing now with this amazing resolution and giving the first step to keep our families together. So I really thank you and appreciate your effort and encourage you to continue this effort for the next year and keep us on the budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Shapan Sanlapasai Okamura. I'm here in capacity as immigrant advocate and immigration attorney, but also representing IRCO's advisory board. I want to share with you a little bit about why this is a great first step, but why it needs to continue. First and foremost, our history, our immigration history, is riddled by immigrants and refugees from all over the world. We first started in 1607 through 1700 with first European immigrants coming to the United States. From 1619 to 1819, 645 million enslaved Africans were brought by force into the United States. From 1820 to 1870, 7 million immigrants, predominantly from Ireland and Germany, were brought to the U.S. In addition, from 1880 to 1920, 24 million immigrants from Eastern Europe, Russian Jews, and Catholics, because of religious persecution, was forced to relocate into the United States. The reason why these numbers are important and why numbers continue to be important because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those concepts are embedded, and those concepts are important and when we look at policy and in fighting for our immigrant and our Oregonians. Oregon alone makes up 10% of immigrant families. 10% of our community are mixed race families. This is critical when we look at the impact on who can be deported. As this administration, this policy looks at denaturalizing 1,800 specifically Burmese refugees are being evaluated for deportation. This is critical. This has to be considered when we look at policy, legislation, and how we care for one another as family and community. I thank you for your time and humbled to be part of this task force. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next, I'd like to invite the following individuals to the table. Jenny Hernandez from Metropolitan Public Defender, Lisa Lesage from Immigration Counseling Services, Jordan Cunnings from Innovation Law Lab, and Kat Kelly from Catholic Charities.
Good morning.
Please just state your name for the record and take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Lisa Lesage. I'm the Executive Director of Immigration Counseling Service, ICS, which is Oregon's oldest and only independent nonprofit law firm serving immigrants since 1978, with offices in Hood River and Portland. We also have the only unaccompanied minors program in Oregon and the only full-time anti-trafficking program. As someone who has done civil rights and immigration legal work for over 30 years, both here and abroad and in the Middle East, I can personally attest to the overwhelming need and crisis that we have on our hands right now. And your vision for this funding goes beyond our immigrant community and is important for our entire Portland community. We currently have a huge number of families who are experiencing food and housing insecurity because the breadwinners have been taken from their home. We have people who are afraid to access medical care, children whose educations are being interrupted, parents who are afraid to go to schools to be involved in their children's education, and people who are afraid to venture out and participate in community life. The fear and the trauma have severe and long-lasting effects. Our advocates on the front lines and their successes are proof that access to legal services provides families and indeed our entire community with stability. Thank you very much for this initiative.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jimmy Hernandez. I come here as an attorney at the Metropolitan Public Defender with a new project that has been there for about a little over a year to exactly address this issue, people who are in deportation. I've been doing this project for a little over a year, literally consulting and representing cases that I could in my limited capacity to for people who are in deportation. And I have seen and I have met them, and I have seen everyone coming into the community to talk about this great need. And I'm just here to say thank you so much for everyone that I met throughout this past year. I also have worked in the federal government and have worked in the immigration courts themselves, and I have seen what it is to have to go to court every day and see hundreds of people come through without a lawyer and not understanding their rights. I have seen children go to court being ordered removed because they didn't even understand that they needed to go find a lawyer. I have seen a child be ordered removed because she didn't know she had a court date. I have seen people who are affected by their histories and their trauma not be able to articulate their claims clearly because they don't have a lawyer to articulate their claims where they do have a right to stay here in this country. And it's a constant, and under this new administration, that has been happening, and it's a growing amount of people getting ordered removed because there's pressure to rush these cases. There's pressures for ICE to prosecute every case, which was not the case before. ICE did not have to prosecute every case, but now they're being told they have to go after every case. It is really a system that is completely being ramped up right now that already had incredible due process issues and complications, and now under the Trump administration, it is amplifying and figuring out every weakness possible to be able to deport as many people as possible. And as someone, as I said, who has met with so many people trying to figure out how to navigate this system and only being able to offer a limited service, now under this initiative with universal representation, I am so excited to be able to meet with people and tell them that there is going to be a publicly funded resource, that the city and hopefully the state will be behind them to be there to make sure that they can offer, that they will be able to assert their rights and have a lawyer. And I just thank you very much for this initiative and for all that you've done.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kat Kelly. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives with Catholic Charities, and I would like to echo what my colleagues have said, thanking the commissioners and the mayor for your support around this initiative. I just returned from the Texas border where I was working on family reunification with families who had been separated when they were coming in for asylum. And whenever I speak with someone here in Oregon about that, one of the first things they ask is, this is so horrible, I can't believe this happened. And something I keep trying to emphasize is this happens every day in Oregon too. And these resources that you folks have provided will, in many cases, provide life-saving services to folks so that they can stay with their families, so that they can stay safe. here in Oregon and remain the integral part of our community that they are. We really want the council to know that we are ready. We are ready to hit the ground. We have lawyers starting in October, and we have a very robust community-based organization relationships that have been around for years, who have worked with folks at risk of deportation for many, many years, but we've never had the resources necessary to provide universal representation. So we're ready, and with those resources, we will be able to effectively increase the services and support that we provide to people exponentially. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. So my name is Jordan Cunnings, and I'm the newly hired strategy attorney at the Innovation Law Lab. And I'm here thanks to your commitment to this work. So thank you from me personally also today. I'm thrilled to be here to provide just a quick update on the work that the city's commitment has already put in motion, starting immediately. Tomorrow, members of 16 diverse community organizations are gathering to discuss a coordinated outreach plan to the community members in Portland who are at the greatest risk of imminent deportation. And immigration attorneys funded by the city will begin taking removal cases as early as October. In the backdrop, some of the sharpest legal minds in immigration law are drafting blueprints that will enable the Equity Corps to achieve success in every winnable case. Our goal is to stop the deportation of every Portlander that we are able to represent. Thanks to the city's investment, the Equity Corps will defend everyone, stop unlawful deportations, and keep immigrant families together. We want to thank the city for acknowledging the urgency of this need and funding it directly, and we look forward to reporting back to you the impact that your commitment is going to have on our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. When we approved the funding, the hope was that other jurisdictions would start chipping in as well. Is that happening?
Currently, we're working with Multnomah County around that, and CAUSA is in the process of working on that with partners around the state.
Yeah, I think we had a particular discussion about Beaverton and Hillsborough and some of the communities that depend on immigrant refugee labor for farming and agriculture.
I'm not sure where Roberto is, but he could probably answer that better than any of us here.
Well, it's okay, as long as I know that those discussions are happening,
Yes.
and I'm sure they are.
Yes, and at the state level too.
Yes.
This was about the most that we could do from the City of Portland, but the need is so much greater than even this money's going to cover, isn't it?
Absolutely, and the leadership provided by the City of Portland, I think, will definitely influence our communities and other places around the state, so thank you.
And I can say I was in New York this spring, and they recognized Portland as one of the leading cities in the country that's taking this up, and the Vera Institute of Justice may be able to provide some matching funding for the city's efforts. So we're following up on that very closely, and we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla, do we have public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have 3 people left on the list.
Very good.
Please come on up. Shedrick J. Wilkins, Larry Cross, and Janice Chang.
Thank you. 3 minutes. Name for the record.
Hi, I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and I want to just say things about Catholic Charities. They have a 4-story building across from Cleveland High School in Southeast Portland. In July, I went to a No on Measure 105 rally. No means we do accept Oregon as a sanctuary state, so vote no on it if you want to keep immigrants coming here. That rally was across from the football field near Cleveland High School near Catholic Charities. So it's kind of a hotbed for political activities. I do think about health care. To me, I wear this button, and actually to me it's a Kate Brown button, because I'll tell you why. Last year in 2017, the legislature passed a thing called Coverall, which means all children in Oregon. This corrects healthy kids, only covered resident children, but last year all children were covered by health care. Well, what happened is in January, Newt Buchner and Julie Perry supported Initiative 101, which would overturn the whole system. But 60% of the Oregon voters voted for Measure 101, which is an insurance tax or something like that for people on the Oregon Health Plan to solicit Medicaid. So now, as it presently stands, all children are covered or have availability for health care regardless of being poor. And I think that is very bad if we ask immigrants' families to come here, but we don't cover their children, because if you're a resident, you get covered and you're poor, but not if you're an immigrant. And Kate Brown is a team player because she passed both. She passed coverall and she supported Measure 101. And that also, there was a rally at a Union Hall right behind Catholic Charities near Cleveland High School, in which no less than Senator Ron Wyden, I got there late, I'm getting old, I'm not one to, full of people, Ron Wyden, Senator Jeff Berkeley, and Lou Fredericks, who was he supported President Obama's reelection, were there giving a speech, and it was full of people. And one reason I haven't been here at City Hall is I hurt my foot. But I like to observe things. And my last statement about this button is Kate Brown's an Oregon team player for health care, for immigrant rights, and I'm not too sure about Newt Buchner.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Attack Dog. One of the biggest concerns I have on the issue, and of course I'll make it very clear, I definitely recommend funding the group, their money, and in fact, if I had the choice, I would double your money at this time and make sure you get every penny because you earn everything you're doing at this time. Now, one of my biggest concerns is that when we're talking common sense immigration reform and when we're talking the position President Trump is taking, one of the things I think President Trump has miscalculated is that when you stated you would be the greatest jobs president, I believe that you will be created. But where you miscalculated on the immigration situation is that you have to reverse back now and understand that the people currently in the United States are needed to stay in the United States. They are needed to be provided a pathway to citizenship and understand that we have more jobs than people currently to fill these jobs. So you have done everything you wanted to do per your campaign, but you have to rethink and reverse back and understand that if you want to be known as one of the greatest humanitarians, such as what I think is Lauren Powell Jobs is, you need to listen very close to her and understand, reverse back a little bit and understand the people are needed in the United States this time. Focus on that, keep them here, offer them a pathway to citizenship, which the Democrats don't seem to want to talk about the 11 million. They don't want to seem to talk about that. Citizenship, and focus on the jobs you have created and the benefits to all the people right now. You have done what you need to do as far as on creating more jobs. Revert back a little bit, just a little bit, and then get these obstructionist, no good for nothing Democrats to step forward and begin to come forward with a common sense plan for immigration reform and quit playing games with 11 million people that the Democrats don't want to do anything to provide a pathway to citizenship because they don't want to do it. They don't want you to succeed. Revert back a little bit, call them out, and then get them out of office for the games they're playing with all the immigrants in the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and fellow commissioners. I'm a little embarrassed. I was walking in with John Herrera, and I thought that was a sign-in sheet, and so, but here I am. I'm happy to still speak to you all and express my thanks. My name is Janice Chang. I am the immigration attorney with IRCO, which is the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization. You know, I'm here also on behalf of IRCO to thank all of you for your investment to truly creating change from the ground up, but I'm also here because it's a very personal issue for me. I identify ethnically as Hmong. My parents are from Laos. I I also see myself and identify as a Southeast Asian. And this administration, with their policies, have impacted many folks in my Southeast Asian community who are facing deportation orders, who have been here for decades upon decades as, lawful permanent residents. And so I'm just thrilled to see this city really walk the walk and making investments into this a community that's also really been giving back to each other, to support each other. And that's all I want to say. My partners did such a wonderful job, and they are excellent, and thank you all.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Anything else, colleagues? Very good. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly.
Well, thank you, everyone who came to testify today. The Welcoming Inclusive Sanctuary City Task Force was comprised of impacted community members, immigration rights advocates, school district leaders, the county, local law enforcement, youth, TriMet, council staff, the New Portlanders Policy Commission, and several of our bureau partners, including Office of Government Relations, Office of Equity and Human Rights, and the City Attorney's Office. What we heard loud and clear from this diverse group of stakeholders was the urgency of needing to protect our immigrant and refugee communities. Since then, we've witnessed continued and increasingly aggressive attacks from the federal administration. Many of us were horrified by the family separation policies enacted this summer and had visceral reactions to the images and stories of children being torn from their families and abused in ICE detention. It is important to remember that immigrants entering the country now are not the federal administration's only target for this type of cruel family separation. This funding will allow our legal service providers to prevent the separation that we don't hear or see about, but is occurring in our communities nonetheless. We know that as of March 2018, there were 600 residents in East Portland alone with pending removal cases. We also know that the majority of individuals facing removal have meritorious cases, but without legal representation, the majority of them will be deported. Providing access to legal services is about protecting everyone's constitutional right to due process. This is one of the most fundamental components of our democracy, and every American, regardless of immigration status, should be proud to defend this value. I've watched this trauma unfold in my own community and circle of friends. I know a woman who is an American citizen, married to a refugee from Sierra Leone. They have a daughter, a young daughter, and he was deported earlier this year after fighting long and hard with very limited resources to stay in this country. Now his family is left crowdfunding in order to keep a roof over their head and continue with their struggle or their fight to bring him back to this country. They're also considering moving to Sierra Leone, which is one of the poorest nations on the planet and a country that's been pretty devastated by a long-running civil war. And I don't think that's a story that any of us wants to hear or should accept. So with that, I'd like to again thank all who testified today for your work to develop this concept and also for the important work you've been doing at airports and courtrooms in Sheridan, around our city and around our state. I'd also like to thank all who were involved in the task force, with a special shout out to the New Portlanders Policy Commission and to Winta Yohannes, who steadfastly continues to leave her name off of my list of thank yous, but I've gotten really good at catching that, and I'm adding her back in. She's on my policy team in my office. She was really instrumental in forming and shepherding this task force. And finally, I want to acknowledge our grassroots community advocates and service providers who've been in this fight for immigration rights for a long time. I want to thank them for laying the groundwork for projects such as this and for their work to raise awareness while diligently defending our immigrant and refugee communities. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Udaley, for your leadership on this project. On behalf of the entire council, none of us needed our arms twisted. In fact, I think you had to fend some of us off in terms of the process that you set in motion and letting the community have their say. I appreciate your work on this and your continued advocacy. As the only immigrant on the council, this is especially meaningful to me. I still have people who write to me saying, go back where you came from. I've been here since 1979. And I'm a naturalized citizen, but I am very well aware that in this administration that makes me a second-class citizen, and that even citizens are at risk for deportation. I'm also aware that this administration is cutting the allocation from 90,000 legal immigrants to 30,000 legal immigrants per year. So when people say, well, they should just go through the legal process, good luck with that. That too is a very arduous and difficult thing to have happen. Mayor, I can't help but notice that there are none of the people who yell at you on a daily basis in the chamber right now. And when the people who yell at us and harass other citizens, other community members coming into council by yelling about demolish ICE, they're conspicuously absent here. And so the council is putting its money where its mouth is and is actually doing things that will help immigrant and refugees. I really wish people who'd like to just yell at us would start knocking on doors and recognize that there's an election coming up in 50 days or so, that significant ballot measures that will also affect immigrant and refugees, and that there are things that they can do. Why leave it to the five of us to do everything? We can't do everything. That's what's going to really make a difference in our community. And if we think it's bad now, let's wait and see what would happen if some of those ballot measures pass. So again, thank you also to Golden Salazar, previously on my staff, who's now teaching in Ecuador, but she was very much a part of and supportive of this project, and I want to acknowledge her work. Aye.
Fish.
Well, we're authorizing a grant agreement today. Really the hard work occurred during the budget process and the prioritization. So to Commissioner Udaley and to Mayor Wheeler, thank you for making this a council priority. And Mayor, thank you for funding it. And I'm obviously pleased to support the grant agreement. Just a quick personal story. My two children, ages 14 and 25, are bilingual. And they're bilingual because their grandmother, Carmen Gomez, who immigrated here from Spain, was mostly a Spanish speaker. She learned a little bit of English and somehow managed to win all the Scrabble tournaments at our house over the holidays. But she is the reason that my children have had this great gift of language. And this weekend, we're burying Carmen. She lived a long and fruitful life, and I'll be in New York burying her and celebrating her life. She came here with very little English and with very few prospects other than a dream, and she is the classic immigrant success story in our country. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for Carmen, because it was Carmen's daughter, my wife Patricia, who took a job at Portland State and announced that we're moving the family west. So I honor Carmen today as we make a stand to support immigrant rights in our community. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, I want to start by thanking everybody who shared their stories today and everybody who testified and really gave a clear narrative to why these resources are so important in the community. Portland has prioritized these resources so that undocumented individuals in our community can receive the representation that they deserve. I want to be clear, I know it's not enough. I know it's not enough. And we have some serious battles coming up on the ballot in November, and that's been alluded to today, and I don't want to understate that reality. So now is not the time to be silent. Now is not the time to have our voices silenced on these important issues. Hate and racism are unacceptable here or anywhere else for that matter. And I do not walk in the shoes of immigrants in this community. I don't. And I cannot imagine the struggles that you're currently facing in this often hostile environment, but I want you to know this. Those of you in the immigrant community, I see you and I stand with you, and the people of this city see you and they stand with you too. That's what this ordinance is all about. It's about making sure that people have access to their existing constitutional rights, which are currently under attack. And therefore, there is a role for the rest of us in this community to play. I want to give credit where credit is due. This would not have happened without Commissioner Udaley. This is an idea that Commissioner Udaley brought to me some time ago, and she said, there's some people I want you to meet, there's some people I want you to talk with, and there's some ideas that we want to pitch you. And here we are now, it's been almost a year and a half even later, and this process has led to something I think very positive, very productive, and I think ultimately it will have very solid outcomes. I was always pleased to hear people testifying saying, and we'll bring back the outcomes and share those outcomes and those stories and those successes with you. That just makes me all the happier. I know behind every great leader there is great staffing, and Winta Johannes, I know that you played a critical role in all of this, so I want to acknowledge you as well. Good work, Portland. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
Just on a housekeeping matter, I just did the math. We've got about an hour and a half of items and we've been greatly exceeding the estimated times. Perhaps we could encourage the folks coming before us in the next few items to be as brief as possible so we can get through this agenda by 12:30.
Well, let's see what we can do. Item 987.
Accept report scaling smart resources, doing what works, a system-level path to producing 2,000 units of supportive housing in Portland and Multnomah County.
Colleagues, last week at a joint work session with the Multnomah County Commissioners, we had the opportunity to hear an exciting report by the Corporation for Supportive Housing on our community's plan to create 2,000 units of supportive housing over the next 10 years. This, of course, is integral to our strategy around addressing chronic homelessness in the city of Portland. This report lays out an aggressive and achievable path forward, including quantifying the total cost of meeting that goal, an assessment of the available resources, and the next steps for implementation. This report responds to Council's request from the October 2017 Supportive Housing Resolution to produce an actionable plan for meeting this goal. Today, I'm bringing this report before the Council for its acceptance with my co-sponsors, Commissioners Udaley and Fish. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Commissioners Udaley and Fish if they have any opening comments. Commissioner Udaley?
I'm going to just have a closing comment when we accept the report, Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Udaley?
Same.
Very good. So without further ado, then, I'd like to introduce, is Heather starting out? Heather Lyons, who's the Director of the Corporation for Supportive Housing's Pacific Northwest and Hawaii office. I wonder if you get to spend any time there. I'm happy to visit on your behalf. And Shannon Callahan, the Housing Bureau Director, and they're going to provide a few basic comments. And of course, we have Mark Jolin here as well from the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having us here, Mayor and Commissioners. I've had the great pleasure of working with the Joint Office on Homeless Services and the Portland Housing Bureau and all of the conveners to develop this report on creating 2,000 units of supportive housing. And first, I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to do this work. It's not often I thank people for giving us work to do, but this was really quite a pleasure. And it wouldn't have happened without the resolution that you all passed last year or last fall. So thank you so much. Very quickly, at CSH, we believe that deeply affordable housing is the solution to homelessness, and that supportive housing is a solution for a subset of people who need both housing and coordinated services to succeed in housing. The report has detailed information about the characteristics of people who need this housing, as well as the types of services that people need to be able to be stable in their housing. There are quite a few potential funding options. We know that the city and county alone cannot fund these 2,000 units that are are the goal over the next 10 years. The resources include things like the health systems, philanthropy, Medicaid and Medicare. There's also greater opportunities to do braided funding amongst jurisdictions as well as other entities that provide funding for services for housing. There are some statewide efforts and metro-wide efforts that will support these 2,000 units as well. The key is to all of this is that there's just a ton of interest in supportive housing right now as a solution to systemic problems, and so it provides a great deal of opportunity for engagement across all of these entities. I just think the notable example is the health systems. They're really engaged. They really see this as a solution to some of their problems of their frequent users, and I think they're going to remain engaged in these continued discussions, not only around policy work, but also about resources. So again, I just want to thank you for your leadership and support in this effort, and it was a true pleasure to work with both Mark and Shannon and other conveners at that group to produce this report for you. So thank you.
Mayor Commissioner Shannon Callahan of the Housing Bureau. I will echo Heather's thanks for the work of the conveners group. We look forward to having this plan adopted today so that we can continue with the implementation of the plan that we've already been undertaking since last October. Just to remind you, we've already been able to achieve or have planned 517 units of new supportive housing, including the West Wind apartment complex, which we announced at our meeting last week. In the spirit of brevity, I would like to turn it over to Mark Jolin for a few final comments about what's next.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you. My name is Mark Jolin. I'm the Director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. I too thank you for giving us this task because it's such a critical work in our shared efforts to end homelessness. There is a robust section of this report that is about implementation. It is the next steps, and without going through them, understand that we view that as our responsibility now to move forward with those implementation steps, including completing the regional planning work that is happening and continue to participate with the state in their planning work, pulling together the two governing bodies that are anticipated there, the Supportive Housing Funders Collaborative that will be looking at resources that will be needed to carry out the vision of this plan, and then also the Supportive Housing Implementation Committee, which will be those of us who have been doing this work to date, continuing our work together in a collaborative fashion. And we'll be working to put together that very clear roadmap about exactly how we get from here to the full 2,000. So I appreciate your support for this work and look forward to continuing to do it with you.
Very good. Any questions? Commissioner Fish?
Mayor, I move to accept the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz.
Public communication, Ted.
It's a report. Please call the roll. Excuse me, you're interrupting. Excuse me. You are in violation of council rules.
I'm glad to leave, Ted.
Thank you.
You're going to be voted out. You're a disgrace.
Very good. Thank you. It's still a violation of council rules, and we're still calling the roll. Thank you.
Udaley.
Well, I want to first thank the Joint Office on Homelessness, the Portland Housing Bureau, and all the resource and housing providers who contribute on a daily basis to housing and supporting some of our most vulnerable residents. I especially want to thank Commissioner Fish for setting us on this path and for challenging us to be bold in solving one of the most intractable crises our city experiences. I was impressed by the data presented and by the plan, and I'm excited that in the first year, we're already a quarter of the way to our 10-year goal, and I hope that we will exceed our own expectations as quickly as possible, because we know we need more. I do want to point out to the council and the public an area of need that was identified in this report but not discussed much. And that is that the report clearly identifies that a lack of tenant protections, especially around screening criteria, continues to be an obstacle for renters of all walks of life. The private housing market is too often failing us by rejecting applicants for minor issues on their records. A lack of regulations has allowed private profit to become more important than the public good, And the result is the housing crisis that we're in. This has direct, disproportionate impacts on communities of color and other protected classes. If we intend to take seriously our commitment to equity and ending racial disparities in our city, we must be brave enough to call it out for what it is and create tenant protections that further federal fair housing law and uplift the notion that housing is a human right. Thanks again for this report. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for the work session. Thank you, Heather, for your ongoing work on this and your leadership now nationally. And thanks, Mayor Wheeler, for being willing to share the responsibilities of the Housing Bureau and housing needs with the former Commissioner, Commissioner Fish, and with Commissioner Udaley's perspective and firm commitment also. Of course, I have both. I just haven't the expertise. What I can offer is the experience in the supportive part of it in terms of mental health care. And as was discussed at the work session last week, one of the challenges is not only the housing, it's providing the professionals who provide the services. And so I will be proposing for the city's legislative agenda that we advocate to the legislature to improve conditions for the providers. And that won't actually necessarily mean more providers. It will mean that the providers stay and don't go off to do other things unrelated to the master's preparation that they may have because of appallingly poverty wages and being expected to work just for the love of it, which doesn't pay the bills and doesn't keep people in jobs. So that's a piece that we need to work hard on. Also, it is concerning that we're not on track to get to the goal in the 10 years at this point. And so we're very close to it, but we're not, if one thinks of the first units perhaps being the easiest to do, it's going to be harder. And I'm saying that not as a something derogatory, but as a recognition to all of us that this may get easier as we go along and we get to know more about how to do what we're doing and just keep replicating it. It may be more challenging after we've purchased the buildings that are available, used up all the resources of personnel that are available, then what? And so it's going to take a lot of work over the next 7 years to reach the goal that Commissioner Fish set for us. And I am, for one, I'm very committed to helping get there. Aye.
Fish?
Well, colleagues, this is a proud and historic day, and I want to thank Mark and Heather and Shannon for their leadership. I thought last week's work session was superb, and the roadmap that you gave us was incredibly thoughtful and comprehensive. One data point really jumped out at me, and you're asking us, we're challenging ourselves to make a bold commitment to invest in success, but consider the alternatives. It costs about $500 a day to put someone in an emergency room bed. It costs about $210 a day to house someone in a city jail. A shelter bed, which is basically a dead end, is $60. And for about $60 a day, we can actually place someone in a deeply affordable home with the services they need to get their life back on track. I think the math speaks for itself. Last year, we challenged ourselves and our partners to find a way to significantly increase supportive housing in our community because, as we've noted, it's the only strategy that's proven to end chronic homelessness. We asked for a roadmap, and today we're accepting your work product. I want to thank everyone who contributed along the way, especially the Joint Office of Homeless Services and Mark Jolin and Heather and the team at the Corporation for Supportive Housing and our interim director and our friends at the Portland Housing Bureau for their extraordinary work. And I want to highlight again something we heard last week, that this work didn't start then or today. It's already underway, and we've made a substantial down payment. A lot of work, of course, lies ahead. Big questions remain about how we're going to fund this. But with this roadmap and with the collective will that we have demonstrated so far, I'm confident that we will get there. I'm proud of how far we've come, and I'm excited to take the next step. Thank you. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Lightning. I was getting nervous. It was almost noon and nobody yelled at me yet today, so I feel balanced again. Second of all, I concur with my colleagues. I thought the report was exceptional. The work session was outstanding. It was both inspirational as well as frank. We all agree we have a lot of work to do, but I also just want to acknowledge the work that has been done by the Joint Office, by the Housing Bureau. Shannon, you mentioned that we actually now already have hundreds of these units in process, so we're well on our way towards achieving at least the early benchmarks in this process. And over the long term, we will have our challenges, but I'm confident that we can rise to the occasion. I vote aye. The report's accepted. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Next item, 988.
Accept bid of James W. Fowler Company for structural rehabilitation of Taggett Outfall for $10,941,172.
Here comes Larry. Our ratings are about to double.
It's a new top.
It looks good. You're looking sharp today. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. I will do my best to be brief. I am Larry Palat, Procurement Services. You have before you the report recommending a contract award to J.W. Fowler Company for the Taggart Outfall No. 30 Sewer Rehab Project in the amount of $10,941,172. The engineer's estimate on the project was $8 million, and the Bureau's confidence level was high. The project was advertised in the city's electronic procurement system. Bids are open on July 31st. 2 were received. J.W. Fowler is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $10,941,172, which unfortunately is 27% over the engineer's estimate. It should be noted here that the city does very little of this type of very large sewer conduit, more so than pipe conduit area, and some sections that are at or near 100 years old. So the capacity of to effectively estimate the cost was hampered somewhat by their limited experience and somewhat by the very, very tight labor and material market, including potential trade war tariffs on the actual metal product. I'll also note that there was a protest concerning the award of this contract, which was thoroughly and independently investigated by Procurement Services and resolved by the Chief Procurement Officer. The Bureau of Environmental Services, along with Procurement, had identified, per our subcontractor equity program, an aspirational goal for disadvantaged minority women and emerging small business enterprises, participation at 20%. James W. Fowler Company, acting as the prime contractor, identified the following areas as opportunities: survey, flagging, tunnel cleaning, paving, pest control, laser testing, fencing. There is unfortunately $84,250, slightly less than 1% of DMW ESB participation utilization identified towards the goal. It's DBE at $59,000. WB $15,250, ESB $10,000. But I'd like to make 2 points at this point, a little bit out of typical report for me. First point is one of the subcontractors for this project is a women-owned business and is in the process of submitting their application to be state certified by the state of Oregon. The subcontract value for this is slightly over $3.3 million. And when they are approved and the actual DMW ESB participation for this project could jump to as high as 35%. My second point regarding the low participation rate for this project is that this particular vendor has an excellent record of participation, demonstrates a true understanding and support for the city's goals. The participation level for 5 of their last projects have been respectively 25.7%, 27.11%, 10.11%, 33.7%, and 20.2% respectively for their projects. James W. Fowler is located in Dallas, Oregon. They are not a state-certified DMWSB contractor. They do have a current City of Portland business tax registration number and are in full compliance with all of the city's contracting requirements. BES has budgeted funds for the project. If the council has any questions relative to the procurement, I can certainly answer those. If they have technical questions about the project, we have Kurt Robinson from BES in chambers today, and we have John Fowler from J.W. Fowler Company present if necessary. Questions?
You've answered all my questions earlier. Does anybody else have any further questions?
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move the report.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Udaley. Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for your work. Thank you for explaining without my having to ask about the low participation. John Fowler, thank you for being here. Thank you for your company's commitment. I've been on the council for almost 10 years and I've never heard the procurement officer defending a company the way that we just heard, and it's a good track record. I'm very grateful that this is now becoming the thing that we all care about, and I'll be working with you on that ongoing. Thank you. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the report is adopted. Thank you, Larry.
Great, thank you all very much.
Next item, 989.
Revised home ownership financial assistance guidelines for the Portland Housing Bureau.
Colleagues, I'm excited to bring this unique opportunity to the council to promote equity and affordable homeownership opportunities for people in our community. The Housing Bureau is going to walk us through the details of the revision and expansion of the homeownership financial assistance guidelines, which will make this possible. Good morning, Director Callahan.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Shannon Callahan. When the North and Northeast Neighborhood Strategy Oversight Committee came to you this spring with their annual report, that report contained a recommendation that the Housing Bureau examine its down payment loan structure. And particularly the requirement that the loans need to be repaid after 30 years. The loans are no interest, no payment loans, but as structured could have resulted or would result in a potential balloon payment to a family after 30 years of ownership. And this was something that was very concerning to the Oversight Committee, as one of our goals for homeownership is to create stable families that if they would like to retain and remain in their home or pass it generationally are able to do that. So after an extensive review of our loan portfolio, practices of other jurisdictions, and the specific application of an equity lens, we're recommending a modified structure to our down payment assistance loans with forgiveness beginning at year 15 and then complete forgiveness at year 30. With that, I would like to introduce you to Ira and Leslie Goodlow of the Housing Bureau, who Ira has prepared this document and the proposal before you today, and Ms. Goodlow is here to read a letter on behalf of the Oversight Committee Chair, who was unfortunately not able to attend. Are there specific questions you have for our team?
Well, I have one question. I think, and I haven't looked at it closely, but I believe we got a letter from Diane Lynn at Proud Ground.
Yes.
And she was raising a concern about the interplay between this proposal, which would, in essence, forgive the down payment loan, and their land trust model, which ensures intergenerational affordability. Have you been able to work out any concerns that she's raised?
So I did reach out to Diane this morning to check in on her letter, and we do have a meeting set up with the Portland Housing Bureau coming up soon. But, you know, to be frank, I'm a little perplexed by Diane's concerns for a few reasons, but I'm happy to sit down and talk with her more directly about.
Can you follow up with us just with your feedback? I mean,
I will do that.
And colleagues, there's a range of different programs that we fund. Some, in order to ensure long-term affordability, like with Proud Ground and Habitat for Humanity, limit the amount of equity that someone can take forward. Others are more market-based, and therefore someone can build equity and intergenerational. She's raised a concern about the interplay between this and the model of Proud Ground, which is a land trust model, which the city has historically thought very highly of. So if we could just get some feedback from you after you've had a chance to meet with her.
Of course, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Is there any public testimony on this item?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leslie. I apologize. I thought that was the end of your presentation.
No.
Sorry.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here. I staff the North-Northeast Oversight Committee, and Dr. Holt was unable to be here this morning, and so on behalf of the committee has sent this letter. Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, I wish that I could be here personally to share my absolute and total support for the forgiveness of the down payment assistance loans. The North Northeast Housing Strategies Oversight Committee has championed these efforts from the first mention of the concept. Specifically, Dr. Bethel raised the idea as a value that should be considered, and we immediately fully supported it. The chance to support gentrified, displaced, and economically impacted families who have lost significant time and opportunity to build generational wealth is not only reasonable, it is right. This is just the right thing to do. By forgiving down payment assistance loans, the City of Portland puts action behind its words. Each of us knows the significance of stable housing. When the house is stable, children, families, and communities all thrive. When the household is stable, neighborhoods are healthy. When the household is stable, economic opportunities expand. When the household is not stable, then the opposite of this is true. Children, families, communities, and neighborhoods collapse, and economic possibilities dissipate. To forgive the down payment assistance loan is to support individuals, families, and neighborhoods for the best possible scenarios now and in the future. It offers families the possibility of generational wealth and keeps them from the stress and duress of a delayed and possibly unexpected economic burden. It is the right thing to do. I am confident that each of you fully understand this moment and what this could create for our city. This is a decision for all of us. We each benefit from stable communities, healthy neighborhoods, and thriving families. I know that you will do the right thing. Thanks for taking a moment to hear from someone who has committed their energy for the past 3 decades to serving the Portland community, dedicated to excellence, Dr. Stephen Holt.
Thanks, Leslie.
That concludes our presentation. Thank you,
Very
Mayor.
good. Thank you, all of you. Public testimony, Carla.
No one else signed up.
All right, very good. In that case, then, this is a resolution. We'll call the roll.
Daly?
Well, this is an issue that was raised by community members with me some time ago. I'm really glad to see that we're addressing it. Thank you to Shannon and Leslie and the Housing Bureau. I vote aye.
Fritz?
This is a really well-crafted policy to make sure that the city that the homeowner gets the support that they need, and that the city can be assured that that homeowner is going to be there for the 30 years and longer. Thank you. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
The action we take today will, as you heard, create homeownership opportunities for low-income and minority home buyers. By allowing people to access more of the equity gained in their homes, we provide greater opportunity for homeownership retention and wealth creation. This council has long been committed to promoting minority homeownership and retention, and this is just one more way that we can do that. These revisions have been recommended through community input and eliminate the concern of significant financial burden on older or fixed-income homeowners who would be responsible for paying back a large debt after 30 years. We are reducing the amount owed on the loan in we're reducing the amount owed on the loan in year 15 incrementally per year. The property is owned until the loan balance is reduced and fully forgiven by year 30. I want to thank the North Northeast Housing Strategies Oversight Committee, the Portland Housing Bureau, and Cupid Alexander on my team in my office for putting this together. Thank you all. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. Thanks for your hard work. Carla, to make up some time here, let's read 990, 991, and 992 together, please.
990, approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Division 2 located at 3249 Southeast Division Street. 991, approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Ellis Apartments located at 5603 Southeast Milwaukee Avenue. And 992, approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Multnomah Station Apartments located at 7654 Southwest 32nd Avenue.
The 3 developments in front of us today create affordable housing through the multiple unit limited tax exemption or multi-program. These developments join the other 36 private sector projects in the inclusionary housing permit approval pipeline, making a minimum of 319 units affordable in otherwise market rate developments. Here today to walk us through these developments is Portland Housing Bureau Development Incentives Program Manager Dory Van Bockel, and of course Housing Director Shannon Callahan is with us as well. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. Hello, Commissioners. So as mentioned, there are 3 projects joining the pipeline for inclusionary housing. Of these, 2 of them are using the reconfigure option in order to provide 3-bedroom units for the affordability, and the 3rd building is actually making all 30 units in the development affordable in order to benefit from the various incentives, both through planning and zoning and the Housing Bureau with exemptions through taxes and system development charges, et cetera, in order to have those all affordable for 99 years. So it's a total of altogether a great number of units that we'll see, 123 total units, and 33 of those being affordable for 99 years at 60% of area median income.
Right.
Nice.
Madam Director, I have 3 quick questions for you.
Sure.
Have we ever voted down a multiple unit limited tax exemption application?
Not to my recollection. You've had some questions in past incarnations of the multi-program.
But ever since we've aligned the program with the inclusionary housing policy,
yes.
I don't recall us ever voting anyone down. I don't recall, in fact, in most of these hearings, anyone testifying. And so my question is, in light of the mayor's desire to speed up the development pipeline, I ask this question innocently because I don't know the answer. Is there any particular reason why these have to come to council?
We have looked at this question as well based on the request of a development group. They do not necessarily have to come to council. The code section could allow for the assigning authority by the director. However, the state statute requires us to have a public hearing, and this council sessions are the best way for us to do that. Otherwise, with our other public bodies that only meet once a month, we don't actually think it would be being sped up. And so the fact that you meet every week looks, at least at this point, to be our best option for a public hearing cycle that's required under state statute to implement.
So by my just informal reckoning of taking a look at the underlying documents, I'm going to make the assumption that the process that brings this to council for what is basically a pro forma approval process probably takes about 3 months adds about 3 months, between 2 and 3 months of additional time, plus there's the staff time. I'm not advocating that we change the current practice, but I'm framing this for the mayor to consider, because now that the mayor has all the bureaus that relate to the development pipeline, the mayor, and the fact that we have had outside groups say that this adds additional time to the development pipeline, I think it's worth at least considering. But I'm not specifically advocating that it not come before us. But we have established rules around whether you're eligible for the multi-program. We've established foregone revenue caps. These are the closest thing to a slam dunk that we have in our system. And if we any part of the process that we can speed up, I think we ought to be looking at. But again, I'm not advocating today that we take it off of the council agenda.
Thank you, Mr. And just to let you know, that's the same direction we've gotten from the mayor, which is partially why I was able to answer your question with some specificity about public hearings, because it is something that we're looking at, seeing if there's a way that we can speed it up. So, thank you.
On the other hand, we don't do a very good job of telling people what we are doing about affordable housing. And I was about to interrupt and say, well, I already know what this is, just let's vote on it. And then Ms. Van Brockel gave us some really interesting information about the size of the units, the fact that multiple different benefits were being combined and getting us 99-year affordability. I think that's important information, both for the council, but particularly for the community to know. So as long as we know that it's only going to take 5 minutes, I certainly am open to some other way of speeding it up, but I do think
But just to be clear, I'm not concerned about the time. I'm not raising an issue about the time that we spend on these. And of course, Commissioner Fritz, this will be slathered over the front pages of 4 or 5 newspapers over the next 3 days that we've taken this action. I'm just concerned that it does add 2 to 3 months to the pipeline, and I'm not persuaded that we should dispense with a public hearing, but this is the least drama-filled part of the work that you do, because it's been cooked with the county, and I want to make sure the mayor has a strong hand to speed up the development pipeline.
I have a couple questions. These are 3 different properties. Are they 3 different developers?
Yes.
I would love to talk to them to learn how they made these deals pencil out, since we've heard from developers for the last couple years that they can't make developments pencil out with our inclusionary housing policy as is. And just point out that it's exciting to see 3 IZ projects in the pipeline, because what we saw with the changes on inclusionary zoning was the mad dash to get permits in before the deadline, and then there was a real lag time before we saw applications coming in under IZ. So very exciting, and I'm happy to hear about them, but agree if we can decrease that time frame, that would probably be preferable.
Very good. Does that complete your?
That completes our presentation.
Okay, very good. Do we have any public testimony, Carla?
No one signed up on
Very
any
good.
of these.
On item 990, please call the roll.
Udaly.
Thank you, and I vote aye.
Fritz.
Great work. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I enthusiastically vote aye. Thank you. Item 991, call the roll, please.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. 992, please call the roll.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 993.
Authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Northeast 148th Avenue, Northeast Gleason Street to Northeast Halsey Street project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is an exciting Fix Our Streets project that I believe has full support from the property owners that it will impact. And I'd like to introduce Dan Layden to walk us through the ordinance. Or if you're not Dan.
Yeah, no, it's
It figures.
I'm Marty Maloney with
Hi,
Piedmont
Marty.
Right of Way. No
I'd
worries.
like to introduce Marty Malone. Yeah.
Welcome, Marty.
Hi. So, good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Agenda item 993 is to authorize eminent domain authority as well to offer just compensation for the needed permanent and temporary property rights associated with this project. The property rights in question are needed for supporting construction of sidewalk improvements along the east side of 148th. The project will also upgrade ADA facilities and driveway connections. Would also like to add that all property owners were invited to the hearing of this agenda item, and like Commissioner Udaly said, there was full support for the project. I'd be happy to answer any further questions you might have.
None. Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Anything else? Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Marty. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marty.
Next item. Sorry, Carl. Sorry.
994.
Are you ready? Yeah, 994, please.
Temporarily exclude overwater structures from stormwater management charges and provide for refunds.
So, Mayor, Janice, why don't you come up and join us at the dais? And Carla, we have a letter, if you could hand that out. It's a letter from Mr. Schmidt that we received. I want to make sure that that's made officially part of the record, and then my colleagues all have a copy. Colleagues, this ordinance would apply to a small subset of environmental services customers, about 50 residential and commercial accounts that have overwater impervious structures such as floating homes or commercial docks. This ordinance would temporarily halt a portion of the stormwater charges and provide reimbursement of prior charges for up to 5 years. This is an interim step that responds to feedback and conversations we've had with members of the community. The temporary step would be in place as Environmental Services undertakes a comprehensive rate study that the Bureau has long planned and that will examine how other cities charge for stormwater services and proposes the best methodology for this city. Excuse me. We're joined today by Jonas Beery, Business Operations Manager, Mike Jordan, Bureau Director, both on the Bureau of Environmental Services, and Janice Thompson from the Oregon Citizen Utility Board. And the letter that you have from the Waterfront Organizations of Oregon is from Mr. Schmidt, who has been sort of the point person that we've been negotiating with. And in his letter, he says that he embraces and accepts and endorses the settlement and urges that appeals be withdrawn based on this proposed settlement. So thank you, Mr. Schmidt, for submitting that letter. Mike, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Mike Jordan. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Services. And given the hour, I'm going to cede my comments to Jonas Beery and let him give you the details. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions you may have. Thanks, Mike.
Great, thanks, Mike. For the record, Jonas Beery, Business Services Manager, and I will also abbreviate my comments as much as I can. Just to reiterate what the Commissioner said in his introduction, just kind of a brief reminder of how we got here. Stormwater charges are based on impervious area. An Administrative Review Committee meeting in 2017 identified city code inconsistency related to the definition of impervious area. We, BES, floated a code change idea in January 2018, received significant feedback on that proposed idea. So we paused that, undertook a number of community meetings and outreach with impacted property owners.
Jonas, just we have to note for the record, you said we floated an idea, so no pun intended.
Correct. Good observation, Commissioner. Fantastic. So we recognize that there is certainly some confusion, valid confusion about the history of those charges, specifically among properties within drainage districts and those within overwater structures. So we use that community input to develop a better proposed solution. So what's in front of you today is not a change to city code. It's an exemption to stormwater charges for properties that include overwater impervious area. As the Commissioner stated, it halts charges and provides reimbursement of prior charges. It is an interim solution until we can complete a comprehensive rate study, and I'll mention that again in a minute. I want to note that impervious area that is not overwater will still continue to be charged. That's not included in this exemption. What are the impacts? This is reflected in the impact statement. As the Commissioner stated, it applies to a small subset of customers, approximately 25 commercial industrial customers and 23 multifamily residential accounts, and those represent about 600 individual residences. The total dollar impact is a reduction of approximately $260,000 in ongoing revenues to the Bureau, plus the value of the reimbursement, which is about $600,000. I want to mention the rate study. You're going to hear more about this in the coming months. We're in the early stages of scoping for a RFP. We're aiming to have that on the street this fall and have recommendations in approximately 18 months. It'll be a comprehensive rate study covering a lot of ground, but stormwater allocation and stormwater methodology will be a major component of that study. And want to flag there will be multiple opportunities for stakeholder input both during that study and after the study before Council directs action for the Bureau to implement any recommendations in that study. And that's where I'll stop.
Thank you. And I'll recognize Janice Thompson, who is a representative of the Citizens Utility Board of Oregon, one of our two regulatory bodies. Thank you for joining us today.
Janice Thompson, Oregon Cub. So my focus today is on the comprehensive rate study angle. This is a topic that I first started talking with the Bureau about in 2015. I think my first written memo dates from the beginning of 2016, highlighting the need to figure out a good timing, strategic timing to update there's a handful of studies, but that encompass a comprehensive rate review. My starting point was not necessarily just because, the previous studies were old, that they were problematic, but it seemed clear that as time went on and the Bureau took a look at them, that updates was necessary, particularly since development patterns have shifted in the city. And there's just in the 15 to 20 years, since some of these studies date back to, there have been really significant shifts in kind of just the technology and tools related to stormwater management. But it was really important to me for the Bureau to hit kind of the strategic sweet spot, because parallel to this thinking, what has been CUB's support of stormwater system planning, and that will be an ongoing process, but that work needed to get to a critical mass such that information that could really meaningfully interact with the rate study. So it had looked like the comprehensive rate study maybe was going to kind of get launched in this current budget year. In my May memo before this group, I said if it doesn't start, it needs to start in the following year. And so this issue, I think, has nudged this forward a little bit, and so I wanted to be clear of that history and CUB's support. And in terms of like the specific topic, that is nudging the rate study, it is very appropriate to have that nudge come in this way. However, I want to be really clear that CUB's position should not be construed as supporting a permanent exemption of the facilities that are also the topic of this resolution, particularly since there is scientific research that indicates that water quality off of just roof runoff exceeds surface water quality standards. So it's a temporary exemptions, and I think I'm looking forward to the work that the Bureau is launching with the comprehensive rate study, because I think it'll inform how to think about this particular issue and actually several other issues. So that's the context I wanted to provide.
Thank you for the nudge. Thank you. That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Very good. Carla, is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for your work and for the input from both CUB and from the homeowners associations. Aye.
Fish?
I want to thank my team, the Bureau leadership, Todd Lofgren, Jamie Dunphy, and others. This is an example where a group of key stakeholders came forward, made an impassioned case around their view of how we should set our rates. The Bureau listened, engaged, had some frank conversations over time, and we've now reached this accommodation. And I want to especially thank Mr. Schmidt for doing the follow-up letter. It is increasingly the case that sort of those courtesies are ignored in our process before this body. But when a key stakeholder takes the time to write a letter saying, I'm satisfied with the results, compliments the staff and the way that they engage the community, and then lays out a path forward, it makes our job easier. So Mr. Schmidt, thank you for that and for your courtesies. And we look forward to launching this more comprehensive analysis with the community and seeing where we land. But I think this is a reasonable solution and compromise to an issue that has vexed us for a little while, and hopefully in the next round we'll get it right. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, this was a very complicated issue, and I want to thank you for your testimony and your hard work on a resolution. And I want to thank you, Commissioner Fish, for sticking to this and pushing this through and bringing it here to the council. I think this is a great resolution. I vote aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Last item, 995.
Amend management agreement with Kemper Sports Management, Inc. to add $2.5 million for the reimbursement of operating expenses for the management of Heron Lakes Golf Course for a not-to-exceed amount of $2,823,400.
Mayor, today we have an amendment to a contract that is before council which would authorize operating expenses that have already been budgeted to be distributed. And I sort of feel like the caboose on this one. This has a longer history, and I would welcome any comments that Commissioner Fritz wants to make. But here's the essential context. Heron Lakes Golf Course is owned by Portland Parks and Recreation and is under a management agreement with Kemper Sports Management. Today we have Amy Archer Masters, Finance Manager, and Todd Melton, Financial Analyst for Portland Parks and Rec, to give us a brief presentation on why this contract amendment is necessary. Amy?
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Good afternoon, I guess.
Thank you.
Portland Parks and Rec has agreements with concessionaires for each of our 5 golf courses. Each of our agreements are unique in ways, but in general, concessionaires perform all of the clubhouse and customer service operations at our courses. That includes reserving golf rounds, taking care of pro shop sales and retail operations, as well as any food and beverage operations that we have at a course. Kemper Sports, as Commissioner stated, has been our concessionaire at Heron Lakes, and they've been the concessionaire there since 2008.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name's Amy Archer Masters, and I'm the Finance, Property, and Technology Manager at Portland Parks and Recreation. This contract was executed administratively in June and expires October 2019. The contract needs to be more clear about the total value of the contract, as it consists of 2 different types of payment. One is for the operating expenses for the day-to-day operations, and the other is for the management fee that Kemper receives for the services. The total size of the contract, which is the sum of those 2 payments, requires council approval. In order to ensure that the city can make timely payment on invoices as provided for in the agreement, the emergency ordinance is needed. Current expenditure authority is expected to be exhausted by the last week in September. Parks and Recreation intends to run an open and competitive solicitation for golf course operators next year to award new contracts by October of 2019, hence the expiration date of this amendment. This council action more clearly documents the total scope of the contract, and as Commissioner Fish mentioned, is already included in the fiscal year 18-19 adopted budget. We're welcome to any questions that you may have.
So let me take a run at putting it into layman's language, because apparently some of the media didn't quite get this. This was always going to be the arrangement that the revenues from people who pay golf pay for the maintenance of the golf course. And the contract previously just didn't say that that's what's going to happen.
That's correct. The language in the agreement actually captures all of the scope of services that they're supposed to be provided and what the contract was going to cover. It's just the not to exceed amount that missed the full language that was covered in the agreement.
But this doesn't change the contract in any way. It doesn't mean that the golf fund is completely devastated and needs $2.5 million from the general fund. Yeah. This is basically being open and transparent about this is exactly what each party does, and we just missed a line in the contract. Is that?
That is correct.
Thank you.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Very good. Any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
Excellent. Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
I would have to say, when I saw the article, I was like, oh, my life as a politician is over. Where on earth are we going to find $2.5 million in the golf program? So I'm really glad to know that I'm actually looking at what it does and doesn't do, that it's, as I say, just being open and transparent about what we're doing. And by the way, commending the golf program for being financially solvent and not having to borrow. And in fact, the entire Parks Bureau didn't have to borrow at the end of last year either. So thank you very much, Amy Archer Masters, for your work in particular, doing 3 people's jobs and doing them all well. Thank you. Aye.
Bish?
Thanks for a good presentation. Aye.
Wheeler?
Thank you. I vote aye.
Thank you.
The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned until 2 p.m.